There you go. That was as boom, baby, as it gets. And, gentlemen, that is how you start a playoff series. Good morning, everyone. Welcome into Monday. Thanks for being here, however you're listening to us here at 93.5, 107.5 The Fan, the 107.5 The Fan app, Alexa, your smart devices, on 107.5thefan.com, all those different ways. Kevin, James, that's as good as it gets, that first half the other day, wasn't it? That was fun. James, you and I were there, and I know, Kevin, you were busy doing a bunch of stuff getting ready for the draft, but that environment was electric, JB.
Absolutely. I mean, I enjoyed it. I definitely hopped on the wear the shirt train. It was bullying people that I saw not wearing the shirt. But I mean,
the scoreboard was bullying people.
I know,
Did you see that?
They definitely bullied the Bucks in game one. And I was joking around, I believe Friday, I was like, Pacers by 1 million. I said they're very tongue-in-cheek, but then when they got out there, I was like, wow, it's Giannis and nobody else. And obviously they cruised to victory, even with Tyrese not shooting the ball well, but they still had 6 guys in double figures, I believe. So an overall great game one, KB, which I thought your 6-game prediction was solid after that one. I was like, wow, they need Lillard like yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think they win a road game without Lillard, frankly, in this series. Pretty clinical, and I don't say necessarily clinical, and like I actually think the Pacers could play better. I mean, to your point, James, Halliburton, and you didn't shoot it like extraordinarily well from 3, but clinical in how you handled game one pressure. I mean, game one pressure is more on the home team. I think without Lillard, it's more on the Pacers right now until he gets back. And from the onset, you handled it so well. Turner hit that early 3. And really 10 minutes into the game, you had built the lead and you never looked back. And I know Milwaukee threw kind of the fake run at Indiana late, but I think 12 was the closest it got. So pretty surgical from the Pacers in game one. And now we wait and seemingly wait and wait. I'm like, damn, wait, they don't play tonight either. So 36 hours from now, that'll be game 2. And obviously Damian Lillard watch will dominate probably the headlines here over the next day and a half. But very impressive. Great balance. I thought your lottery picks contributed. I know a lot of people care about that stuff as well. So nice work from Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker, but very, very surgical from Indiana going up 1-0.
There was a quick play, a sequence in the third quarter that I thought really summed up the entire game. You don't always get that in one sequence or one play. And I don't know if you can remember it, JB and Kevin, all you were watching. There was a block by Turner. They get out on the break. Halliburton has it. Quickly down on the right corner, on the far corner, is Mathurin. Halliburton hits him. He buries the 3. And it just that was in a nutshell how that game worked out for Indiana.
Yeah, I thought Mathurin looked very comfortable in his first game. And I thought it was even better for the team overall. They kept scoring at the free throw line. I believe 8 of 8 from the free throw line, had 9 of his 13 in the second quarter. And again, talk about strong starts, KB. He comes in, giving them that extra scoring punch they didn't have last year, and they continue to push that lead and just put pressure on Milwaukee to play perfect. And that's what it felt like. I mean, yeah, Giannis got his, but even with the fouls they used against him not shooting the ball great from the free throw line, it all factored into an explosion from him, but a very contained one. I believe he had 1 assist, 5 turnovers, and over the last 10 games going into the playoffs, he'd averaged 10 assists. And so, again, if the recipe is let Giannis cook and everybody else, kind of struggles in the kitchen, you live with that.
I mean, the Bucks others just stunk flat out. And if you're Doc Rivers, I know he really didn't go there much post-game. I mean, he's got to think about a starting lineup change. I mean, how many times do you think in the history of the playoffs, guys, a starting, I guess you would consider them their starting 2 and 3, Kuzma and Taurean Prince, how many times do you think we've ever seen scoreless efforts from a starting 2 guard and a 3 guard without injury, without foul trouble? It's not like these guys got hurt. It's not like they were in foul trouble and Taurean Prince and Kyle Kuzma go goose egg on you. I mean, their best players are Gary Trent and AJ Green, not named Giannis, of course. So yeah, the 1 assist number, I mean, that's a season low for Giannis, even if you don't want to look at the crazy last month of the year that he's had. So I tweeted out late in the game. I was kind of sitting there joking to myself. I'm like, okay, how quickly will Rick Carlisle bring up last year, game 1 versus game 2? And I think it was like 22 seconds into the post-game press conference, he went there. And so I have a feeling when he joins us tomorrow at 8 o'clock, he's probably not going to be in the mood to want to recap much of game 1, but we'll get into it today. We'll certainly get into it tomorrow. I don't expect anything like last year game 1 versus 2. For those that don't remember it, the Bucks won game 1 rather handily, really just the first half. Lillard had an explosion. The Pacers came back. and won game 2 to get that split. I'd be stunned, frankly, if the Pacers don't head to Milwaukee up 2-0, and the Lillard angle would be the only way I would change my thoughts on that. And even if he does play, how many minutes is he even going to play in his first game back in about a month?
My favorite box score stat line of all time. Of all time.
Okay, I don't know if you're trolling here.
You know
We'll
where
see.
I'm going?
I
Do you
think
know
I
where
do.
I'm going?
I think I do.
How much money does Kyle Kuzma get to produce a stat line like that?
Kyle Kuzma, ladies and gentlemen, played 21 minutes, which was apparently 21 too long in this game. 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 for 5 from the floor, 0 for 2 from three-point range, 0 for 2 from the free throw line. He didn't even have a turnover. He didn't exist in this game. I don't know why I even bothered to put his name down in there. That is the first ever NBA starting more than 20 minutes Blutarski I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it was just bad. I know Doc defended him after the game. He did get a couple of just bad shots early in the first half, but when you're missing free throws, turn the ball over as well, and I know he had like the weird not trip on Mathurin, and I was just like, what are you doing? And I mean, the sentiment, at least reading the comments on my post-game story, all I had was like just a quick recap of the game. A lot of Bucks fans were like, wow, we got rid of Chris Middleton for this guy. Like, we get Chris Middleton wasn't available as much as we liked him to, but, we'll take the hobbled guy over this guy who, just hasn't played a lot of winning basketball as of late. I know in Washington he wasn't, got his numbers as far as scoring, but never really affected much winning. And honestly, I think the LeBron boost, the Lakers championship kind of changes how you view him in a sense because, on that team, he was like a 4th or 5th guy. But on this team, if you're asking to be your 3 or on days like that, you're 2, it's hard. And so, again, I thought that the Pacers did a really good job of keeping him and others out of rhythm. I thought they defended the 3 really well. KB, running guys off the line. And you'll take it for sure. But as we know, it's one game, and Siakam really drove that point home after the game.
I probably sounded like a broken record at times last week. I was like, okay, Giannis is the best player in the series, but the Pacers have the 2nd best player, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and I probably should have gone even further.
Yeah, you should just keep counting.
I mean, 6 and maybe even 7. Now I feel like LeBron and Dwayne Wade at a Miami Heat introductory press conference. But in all seriousness, I mean, again, Gary Trent Jr. and, AJ Green are the guys that, were the only Bucks that really showed up. And so they have major, major question marks. And frankly, I just don't think they have the firepower to win on the road without Lillard. And again, what does Lillard look like when he comes back? But having said all that, again, I thought the Pacers handled everything that goes into a playoff atmosphere so well. They met the moment early. They didn't have a sluggish start. It wasn't feeling some pressure early. I mean, hell, the guys, they had 2 turnovers. I mean, when you think about it in the first half, that's an absurd number when you play at the pace that the Pacers do. So very impressed, especially on a night when, you didn't get this, historic video game all-star night from Tyrese Halliburton. Twin going away to pretty much lead by double digits throughout. Job well done by the Pacers, and now we'll wait tomorrow night. Reminder, this is one of those NBA TV games, so you will get Chris Quinn and Jeremiah Johnson, who joins us at 9. You will get them as probably your only option here from a TV standpoint. Obviously, we'll carry the game beginning 6:30 right here on these airwaves.
We know how quickly runs can happen in the NBA, so we've seen huge leads disappear in the past. But did either of you guys get the sense when Nembhard hit that 3 right before halftime that that's just the way the day was going to go for the Pacers?
For the most part, I know Kevin mentioned the fake comeback there late, and I did get a little worried. I was like, man, like this team is kind of hanging around, and you're missing shots, and it got really stagnant on both ends there late. But again, you're asking them after shots like Nembhard, the fast start from him, you're asking the Bucks to play perfect. And it's like, I don't think you can do that. And then when Giannis is still missing free throws, it's like, and again, the guy isn't a great free throw shooter. I think he's like 61% this season, which is obviously not good.
Yeah, career low for him from the line this year.
Yeah, but 8 of 15 is not going to cut it as well. So, yeah, early on, I was like kind of a little bit worried, on the Pacers' behalf, just thinking, man, this guy's racking up a lot of fouls on key Pacers players, but as much as he was trying to wear them down with his physicality, you could tell it was taking a toll on him. I mean, there was a moment in the game where I'm watching the bench, and Giannis, I was like, where is he? I couldn't tell where he was. And I had actually asked, like, Tony East to my left. I'm like, did he go back to the locker room? And he had, like, basically gone to the bench, put on a shirt, a towel, two, like, big old, like, knee brace, like, looked like ice pads or whatever. And he looked like he was mummified. And I was like, wow, he got up off the bench. And I was like, wow, it takes all that to carry this team. And so
I didn't have mummified Giannis on the bingo card.
Man, he looked like it for real. Because I was like, where did he go? And he just, emerges. And I thought it was an injured player, and it's Giannis. So he certainly wants Damian Lillard back. He didn't say that, explicitly after the game, but said he would welcome him as soon as possible. And I think Dame kind of let us all know at the end of that game, he's probably going to play in game 2. The way he was chirping at Halliburton and Siakam, I did ask Siakam what was said and kind of, not necessarily what was said, but, how much energy do you give to that stuff? And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he was just like, I don't know why, I don't do all the talking. I just go out there and play. We're just trying to win. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're a lip reader out there, you can certainly, tell that it wasn't just, yo mama and yo mama. It was a lot of other things going on and being said. And again, if you're chirping like that, if you're Damian Lillard, I would expect you to be back to kind of answer for that. So,
which I think there's a little ice between him and Tyrese.
And I like it.
Yeah, the whole Dame time thing last year in the bubble, or thankfully not last year in the bubble, last year in Vegas. Yeah, it just seems like there's something more. But until he returns, I mean, honestly, when I said Pacers in 5, I almost meant Pacers in 4 until Lillard comes back.
Yeah. Also, I got to give it up to the fans that rocked that gold out. Like, there were very few people not wearing a gold T-shirt.
There are some people in those first couple rows I'd like to have a word with.
Well, but
am I allowed to publicly say some names, or should I not?
What's the capacity over there?
Yeah, 17.
17.
Right?
There were at least 16,700 gold shirts on display.
I won all 17,000.
I do win all 17. But here's what I do love: they're bringing it to, like, I don't know if it matters or not, but when a guy's struggling from the free throw line anyway, and as you mentioned, he's getting kind of beat up and things aren't going well for Giannis, you can't tell me by the 15th time he's at the free throw line and the crowd is in unison, 17,000 strong, going 1, 2.
I almost thought he shot through the rhythm. It was like he waited every time
it didn't work
until like 9. He would then all of a sudden start to like rise up. And then he'd hit his foul shot. What was he? Was he right at a season average? I don't know what 8 of 15 is.
That was beautiful. I enjoyed that level of fandom. I really did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how certain players of his caliber, like NBA players, their routines don't make sense. Like, why do you have a routine that takes that long and makes you think about the shot that much? It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, if you compare it to other free throw shooters, it's like you don't want to rush the free throw shot, but you certainly don't want to, like, it's almost like he gets the ball, he breathes, he, dribbles, does his routine, and he gets to the peak of his shot, and he holds it for forever, and then he releases it. It's like it's not one fluid motion. And, there's not many things I'm very confident about, but I am dead serious when I say I can shoot better from the free throw line than Giannis. Like, that's not good. 61% is just awful. And again, it's like, I guess if you can't have it all if you're a player like him. But again, that's part of why you do want to foul him. You don't want to give up the dunks. You don't want to give up the layups. You rack up the fouls if you have to. And, you hope that any given night he can kind of get in his own head and sometimes listen to the crowd and get a little bit sped up. So we'll see. But one thing about it, he was very confident after the game, like he should be. I mean, he's a champion. But he was just saying, we'll figure this out. I'll be better. We'll be better. And so it doesn't sound like there is any confidence lost on their end. And he was just saying he hopes that his teammates and even himself to a degree are just more decisive with their decisions. But I thought that, the Pacers did a good job of, blitzing Giannis, but also throwing numerous bodies at him and being relentless. And there were moments there where they didn't foul. I thought the Miles Turner block in the third quarter, and it was kind of like the jump ball. He went up 2 hands and blocked them. Crowd goes crazy, and Miles is hyped. And like those moments, I think really help you because it's just making it hard on the guy. Like, yeah, if he scores 36, whoop-de-doo, was it an efficient 36? And I don't think that very much was.
All right, we're going to talk more about this all morning long. One quick thing I would make a recommendation to the crowd. Wait till a very key moment when he's at the free throw line the next time. And right when you get to 8 or 9, just the next number you say has nothing to do with the correct order. Like 8, 9, 26, tell me that won't get his attention just slightly subconsciously, Kevin. I was thinking about this the other day.
You can go rapid fire. You can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
All right. We're going to talk about this throughout the morning. Also, the NFL draft is now just, little more than 3.5 days away. Let's go.
Let's do it.
That's next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Good morning, everyone. It's another glorious day to be an Indianapolis and Indiana sports fan as the Pacers wake up this morning, more than 36 hours off a victory over the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 1 of their Eastern Conference first-round series. Kevin Bowen, it was Pacers almost wire to wire. How do they follow it up tomorrow night?
Yeah, obviously the Lillard angle will be huge here in the next day and a half. We'll see about it. I think both teams, I believe, are practicing today, so we'll get a little bit update later today. I can't see Milwaukee winning without him, point blank. I just thought I thought their others, frankly, stunk on Saturday. I thought the road environment of a playoff atmosphere was way, way too much for them. And as much as the Pacers played well, I still think the Pacers have another gear or two. That's the scariest part to me if you're a Bucks fan from Saturday. It's like, wait, Tyrese Halliburton wasn't even in double digits? The Pacers shot it fine from three. I didn't think they shot it out of this world from three. So, I saw the spreads at 4.5. I'm curious if Vegas is thinking that Lillard will show up tomorrow night and get a little bit of run.
He looked like he wanted to off the bench, didn't he, JB?
Yeah, certainly got to chirping at the end of the game. It was, I think, Damian Lillard,
Sweater
based off the
looked
video,
like something my dad would wear back in the day at a birthday party.
He certainly had the fashion fit off, but I thought, for me, it was a lot of him chirping at Halliburton going back at him, and Siakam get in the mix. And to me, a lot of it has to be just playoff basketball intensity. And it doesn't sound like Dame and Ty like each other, and that's fine. I mean, that's the great thing about sports. As I always say, it's controlled hate.
Now, Game 2, 7 p.m. tomorrow night at the Fieldhouse. You can listen to it live right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. The great Mark Boyle, he looked good. Did you see him in his suit? Man, sharp.
Yeah, he's always sharp, though.
Sharp.
That's
sharp,
Mark
sharp.
Boyle to a T.
NBA playoffs yesterday. The Thunder take a 1-0 lead over the Grizzlies, one of the worst beatdowns in NBA playoff history. Kevin, 131-80. A 51-point playoff win.
Yeah,
wow.
That was an absolute ass-kicking. So through 8 series here, we've had, 2 road teams? Late last night, you had the Houston Rockets scoring a season-low 85. So the Warriors, out of the play-in, go into Houston. They win Game 1. And, of course, the T-Wolves over the Lakers. East, pretty quiet. I didn't think we got any, late drama. I know the Pistons, for a while there, more than hung in there with the Knicks, but the Knicks pulled away with a big run early in the fourth quarter. So far here in the East, all the home teams winning Game 1.
JB, the Warriors take home court advantage away from the Rockets in Game 1, 95-85, and it was, once again, Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler like, yeah, we've been here and done this. Watch us.
Yeah, that tandem has been amazing since Jimmy Butler got there. They're not really a 7 seed in my eyes because of how well they played since the trade, and so maybe Houston got short end of the stick, but to, be the champ, you got to go through the champ, and Steph Curry ain't going nowhere. That's the guy you have to kill him and then make sure he's dead because he is so good. And the shots that he was making, I mean, their offense was horrible for most of that game outside of Jimmy and Steph, but Steph really, kept them afloat there and then held on for the finish. And I believe out of all these games so far in the playoffs, only one has been decided by single digits, and I believe that was the overtime game where Denver held on against the Clippers.
All right, other NBA scores yesterday. The Celtics over the Magic, 103-86. Cavaliers looked like the number 1 seed in the East. They polished off the Heat by a score of 121-100 in Game 1 of that series. For you, Kevin Bowen, the RBC Heritage, Justin Thomas back into the winner's circle with a one-hole playoff victory and a birdie there on the first playoff hole, $3.6 million worth.
Yeah, poured it in the middle. That was a cool scene on the 18th hole there. So back-to-back, pretty good drama there for the PGA Tour. James Boyd, Colts back in the building today. Off-season program is underway. Definitely want to hit on a couple items at some point, and you will be out of here in about an hour for the Chris Ballard pre-draft presser.
Yeah, I got to go ask him a lot of hard-hitting questions. He's going to tell me his big board. He's going to tell me he's going to draft. He's going to tell me if he's going to trade up. I asked the fan base to send me some questions. In all seriousness, a lot of you sent me some fantastic questions, but there's always a few in there where I'm like, he's not going to just tell me what they're going to do in a couple of days because, A, that would be terrible, GM malpractice. But number 2, he doesn't know because you got to see how the board kind of shakes out.
Baseball, Diamondbacks over the Cubs 3-2 yesterday, and our Reds, KB, put 24 on the board against the Orioles in a road win, and they only had 3 home runs to do it. How about that?
Mark Dykton taking the day off after the Reds put up 24. I don't know if there is a softer move I have ever seen in my entire life. And correct me if I'm wrong, you said he called in to tell you he was taking the day off at 9 p.m. last night?
Maybe 9:45, something like
Just pathetic
Yeah.
there. Corbin, can we get some red sound?
that. We got to do that.
Maybe
This
a
is
Reds
not
fight
even
song
true.
a little bit later.
He told us. I think he told me at least that he was not coming in.
No. He called in at
Oh.
9 o'clock. Just pathetic.
Mark, I got your back,
Soft
man.
as a
I'm
baby's
snitching
backside,
when
Mark
you get
Titan.
back.
Yeah.
I'm snitching on these guys.
Unbelievable.
He had his cell phone in his right hand, popcorn in his left. He's watching John Cena at the WWE event, and he's like, "Yeah, I got other things to do."
Mark is a
tomorrow morning."
progressive thinker. You know what? Those 4-day work weeks, my man, I don't blame you. Other countries do it.
Corbin Lingerfelter
We
in
gotta
here
tap
today.
into the Mark days off here. Man.
I know. It's got to be up to like 62 this year already, isn't it?
Take your time,
Gotta
Mark.
be.
Take your time, brother.
Right.
More in a moment as we continue on a Monday morning. We can call this a Victory Monday, can't we? We'll hold it over from Saturday. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. There you go, Kevin Bowen.
Corbin, I want to kiss you.
Do you have one of those flags that attaches to your window when you roll it up and it just kind of hangs there outside the car?
I woke up early this morning, took that to the Dykton household.
You planted the Cincinnati Reds flag right there in the front yard?
Looked like Baker Mayfield at the Horseshoe back in the day.
That's the level of petty you're looking for, JB.
Corbin, outstanding on that. Great find.
I can respect that.
The
Great
Reds
find.
putting up 24. Is that now? They haven't used up their allotment for the rest of April, have they?
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. Hell, probably May, knowing the Reds.
What was more surprising? They scored 24. That Ellie De La Cruz was only one of 4 in that game yesterday.
Yeah, they had some others step up.
Everybody got some. Yeah.
Probably a good thing here. So lurking, but again, looking up. To be fair, looking up right now at the Cubs in the Central.
They're 11-11 though. KB. There's only good things ahead. It's only good things ahead. We're coming off a win on Saturday afternoon over at the Fieldhouse. A game that really, other than that fake run towards the end, even the 117-98 score at the end, probably not indicative of what the game was like. I mean, it was the Pacers at no time, I don't believe, were in fear of losing that basketball game.
Yeah.
When it got to 12, come on.
Yeah, but it was like 12 with several minutes left, and I was thinking to myself, you all have to make sure you score to finish the game. And I believe A.J. Green got going a bit for the Bucks. He was like the only one who really shot it well from the outside. And so maybe that's a little bit of the blueprint for game 2. But, yeah, I just felt like if you get a few more buckets, I know Miles hit a shot there late as well. Tyrese had a couple of free throws and to cap it off there. And, again, a win is a win, but you certainly don't want to give them hope going into game 2. And maybe they can find a little bit of it, but that was just a complete beatdown from start to finish. And I certainly think the Pacers are looking at themselves like we can play better as well.
I would start Gary Trent if I were Doc Rivers. Probably bench Kuzma. I don't know. Let Kuzma just be crazy with the second unit. Their best lineup there late, if you want to point to the fourth quarter, was, Giannis with all those bench guys. With Green, with Trent, with Kevin Porter Jr., Bobby Portis. So that, honestly, is probably their best group right now, which, obviously Lillard's return will dictate a whole lot. But, again, I know Rick will echo the same thing here when he joins us in a little over 24 hours from now, but I don't think this will be like Game 1 versus 2 last year. For those that missed it, last year in Game 1, or I should say don't remember it, Lillard had 35 in the first half of Game 1. Like, that's a fluke. I mean, Lillard obviously is a world-class talent, but no one's scoring 35 and a half.
Fair.
So you knew that wasn't going to happen in Game 2. And Halliburton played better in Game 2. Boom, what happened? The Pacers largely controlled that game. Go back to Saturday, guys. The Pacers didn't have some fluke individual performance. Giannis looked the best he had looked in a month. Siakam looked the best he had looked in a month. I just thought that was normal Siakam, what we're used to. Nemhard, that's kind of what we're used to out of him in these playoff settings. It's a huge credit to him. Halliburton wasn't out of this world. Mathurin attacked and was, I thought, had some really good moments, but he didn't shoot it great. So I don't think this will be at all like a fluky, hey, Game 1, Game 2, you're going to see a total 180. I mean, unless Lillard plays, I fully expect the Pacers to be up 2-0.
I'll tell you one thing I know Coach Carlisle is really happy about, and you touched on it just a few minutes ago, KB. Only 2 turnovers in the entire first half for the Indiana Pacers, and it's just a fact. Teams that have consistently fewer turnovers than their opponent just win a lot of basketball games, JB. Always taking care of the basketball.
Yeah, that
Always.
was, I believe they only had, or Tony East might have put this out where it's like, no player on the Pacers had more than 1 turnover. And when you take care of the basketball, you get good shots, and you're forcing them to miss a lot of shots and kind of junking up the game on their end. It bodes well for your future. So, again, I thought it was a very decisive win, but just one win. And when he got Rick after the game, I'm doing like math in my head, like 1/7 of the series has passed, and I'm like, this is the most Rick Carlisle answer ever. But honestly, you would expect that from a team that, last year it was kind of you're like playing with house money. This year there's expectations, I believe.
By the way, credit to the Pacers' entire 10-man rotation. I mean, Thomas Bryant, I thought, contributed. I didn't think it was a slam dunk he'd be in the rotation. McConnell had the pull-ups working. I know the Bucks love to go zone when McConnell's on the floor. He did a nice job as well. So, Oftentimes in the playoffs, we get into these debates. How deep do you go into the bench? How do you look at that? Pacers went, 10 deep like they really have all year long. And I thought all 10 gave them something. I mean, Jarris Walker was guarding Giannis for decently long stretches there. Again, Matherin, I thought, came in the first half and did a nice job establishing himself, getting to the foul line. Again, 8 of 8 is certainly playing to his strengths as well. So, boy, there's just there's so much to like from what the Pacers did in Game 1, yet I know full well there's still another gear in them.
One of my favorite things to do, and it's the Fan Morning Show on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan, along with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd. I'm Jeff Rickard. Corbin Lingenfelter in the hot seat today, as Mark Dykton called in at like 11:15 last night, JB. I don't know.
It keeps getting later.
got a text this morning in the middle of the night, something like that. One of my favorite things to do, though, when I go to these playoff games, and I just love the atmosphere, when I get there, I like to get there about an hour early. I like to walk around the outside of the building to kind of get a feel of how the fans are. I saw a little John between the one or two Milwaukee fans and a couple of Pacers fans beforehand. But one thing was really cool, and I saw this on social media. I didn't see it live, but I saw it on social media. You know that little basketball court they have there just off the side of the field house where they got a couple of baskets and a bunch of basketballs for the kids to go and shoot some baskets before the game? Have you seen that? You've been down there where the ice rink is usually?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
It's cool. So there were some kids doing that last night. Obi Toppin, or I guess it's Saturday afternoon, not last night. Obi Toppin goes over there, and he starts sign languaging with one of the kids down there on the thing. This is really cool to think there's a kid that's being seen and heard by an NBA player. How cool was that?
Yeah, I did see that video and did a quick Google search on this.
How old is that?
I don't know how old it is, but I'm like, it certainly looked like it was a fairly recent video. But I do want to inquire about that. Just like, where'd you learn it? And again, when you can be more inclusive, that's always embraced. I mean, basketball's for everyone. That's kind of how I view it. Sports are for everybody. So, yeah, Obi's a good guy.
One of my favorite guys.
I'm curious about that. Yeah, I'll definitely ask him about that.
Also, a lot of shots on the scoreboard of Caitlin Clark. Did you notice that? A lot of cutaways to Caitlin Clark there in the scoreboard. I dig that. She's on it like most 23-year-olds. She was on her phone half the time. But there was one moment where she sees she's on the thing, but she looks over to her left real quick, and there's a little kid wearing a red 22 Fever uniform, and she pulls him into the shot, kind of gives him a hug and shows him off a little bit. Just little things like that. I like that. And I have a question, too. Has nothing to do with basketball, but I think about this crazy stuff all the time. I'm looking at the halftime show. Did you see the halftime show at all?
No, I did not see the halftime show at all.
It's the one where this big, huge, muscle-bound dude, probably like 6'5", 6'6", is holding on his shoulders or his head like a tetherball pole that just goes straight up about 12 feet in the air, and there's a woman climbing up on top of that thing doing all kinds of acrobatics, and I'm thinking that's great that you learn how to do that and get that down, but what does that look like in the developmental stage? There's got to be a lot of falls and pain, right?
Look, I guess you can really pay attention to the halftime show when the Pacers are about $1 million.
24, yes.
Because, I mean, I respect everyone's hustle, but I don't think I've watched the halftime show in years.
You miss Red Panda?
I miss Red Panda because, I mean, as a writer, you're always trying to take that time to write something and get some notes out there. But real quick on Caitlin Clark, those were Stephanie White's children.
Is that what that was?
Yeah, I mean.
It was cool, though.
To be honest, who do you think is going to be near Caitlin Clark that isn't famous? But, yes, those were Stephanie White's children. And, again, she looked like she was enjoying it. She did wear the shirt, KB.
Yeah,
so, like, if Caitlin Clark can wear the shirt, you can wear the shirt.
Yes, again, I won't call out any individuals in the first couple rows. You know who you are. That were not rocking the shirt on Saturday. Again, tomorrow, coming up 7 o'clock. Reminder, you won't get your ESPN. I know some people, certainly are sticking with Chris Quinn and JJ. But, others enjoyed Michael Grady and Stephanie White. Tyrese Halliburton was mic'd up as well, so I think that's a little bit what you get from a national angle. But tomorrow, it will be local for you here, and obviously our airwaves at 6:30. James, Colts offseason program begins today. You'll see some pictures from them back in the building. Non-quarterback battle. What are you watching for this spring? Non-quarterback battle. Non-draft, non-quarterback battle.
Ooh.
What would be on your mind here this spring?
A lot of A.D. Mitchell. I'm very curious to see how he attacks or approaches year 2. And obviously, the caveat there as well, what does he do, come fall and come real game time? But I get all that. But just seeing him, hearing from him, I mean, what he learned from last year going into this year, I think that's a huge thing. What's the plan probably at running back behind JT? I know some of that is draft related, but, you'd hope that you get some answers there, some more reliability, because if he doesn't get banged up, which he has in the past, you're kind of scrambling for answers the last couple of years without him in the lineup, especially, last year without having Zach Moss on the team anymore. So little things like that. And then on top of that, how much do the new guys sort of change the tenor or the feel of the team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're learning a new defense, so I'd probably start there. Lou Anarumo installing a new defense. And then, you bring up running back. I would say you probably have, 7 starting jobs open? Obviously quarterback, tight end is open, and certainly you could get some clarity on that come Thursday night. Right guard is very much open. They act like center is a competition. Again, linebacker to me, the playing time next to Zaire Franklin is very much up in the air. And hell, what are you doing at kicker? So, non-quarterback, obviously that
There's
will
KB's
be the
kicker question, you all.
That will be the dominant. And I guess this is obviously going to involve quarterback battle. But what's different for Richardson? I believe he is going to meet the media coming up tomorrow. I think that's kind of the plan here in week 1. What is different fundamentally from him? What did the healthy offseason do for him? This time last year, it was still the talk of, okay, where are you at recovering from the shoulder? How much do you feel like you're full throttle, et cetera, et cetera. And while they won't get on the field for a month in 11-on-11 settings, you do get individual periods. At this point in the offseason, you obviously can start to throw with your guys just based off both of you, or I should say, him and the pass catchers, back in their, home city, if you will, here from an NFL standpoint. What's different from him fundamentally? Like, will it look different watching him throw the football, or no? Is it all very subtle? Those are probably some things on my mind.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And KB, if there's one question you are most interested in asking and feeling like you might get a real answer on today, what would that be?
He's always pretty transparent on how many blue chip players he describes in a draft class. So what exactly is that number here in 2025? And again, he's not going to say this, but I don't know if I'm totally sold that Tyler Warren is this overwhelmingly different prospect than Colston Loveland in their eyes.
I don't think that.
Yeah, I'm not on that boat. Again, I don't know if he'll necessarily say that. I obviously don't probably expect him to say it. But in all seriousness, the Matt Gay storyline, when it happened a week and a half ago, James, I thought the timing was odd. So why now? Or I guess it's now. Why then? Why did it happen on April, whatever that was, 9th, 10th? I forget the exact date on it. And, again, how does he view kicker? So as weird as that sounds, as odd as that sounds, that is the reality of the 2025 Colts. So that would be on my list.
Kicker Rodrigo Blankenship hit a 53-yard field goal for the St. Louis Battlehawks yesterday.
And we continue on with,
good day for our Legos. Miles Turner had a big game on Saturday as well.
Yes, he did, but I think comparing Miles to Blankenship is a little bit, rough there for Miles. I do think that it's not the sexy topic, Kevin, but it is a real one. I mean, kicker matters in the NFL. It's probably why it's one of the best leagues when it comes to parity, is that, much as we talk about spreads and who's the favorite in certain games, it always comes down to one score, one possession most times. I believe all 8 of the Colts' wins last year were one-score games. And so I do expect them to bring somebody in for competition alongside Spencer Schrader. You can't just hand the keys to a guy who's made 5 kicks in the NFL in his career and is going into his second year. You can't just do that outright. And I wonder if that means, drafting a kicker super late, signing an undrafted free agent, or do you try to go find a veteran to push Spencer as well? So there's definitely some underlying things there beyond just quarterback. It's just that in our business, quarterback dominates everything.
Here's something interesting, I thought. Peter Schrager, formerly of NFL Network, where's he work these days? Is he still looking for a new job, or what's going on there? I don't know. But he
ESPN, right?
Yeah, he tweets out, having spent the entire weekend on the phones, here are 2 names who will go higher than where the consensus mock drafts have them going right now. Number 1, Mikael Williams, the edge rusher, and number 2, Colston Loveland, the tight end.
Yeah, I was talking with Rick Venturi over the weekend. Maybe get more into this tomorrow. Him and I were kind of going back and forth on some draft thoughts. He doesn't think it's a lock. Loveland gets there to 14. which, James, I don't even know if you've looked this up or if your athletic stat crew could look this up. When's the last time we've had 2 tight ends taken in the first 14 picks?
Yeah, that
That's
certainly
got
would
to
be
be rather unprecedented at that position. And I know a lot of people might roll their eyes at such a comment, but again, it is not a offensive sexy draft at the skill group or even quarterback for that matter. I mean, there's some debate. We only have one quarterback go in the first 14 picks. And last year we had what, 5?
I think it might have been 6.
Was it 6?
6 and like 12 picks.
I mean, we had 3 wideouts go in the first, 9 picks last year. We might have a wideout go, in that range as well. I mean, Brock Bowers went, 13 last year? I mean, Brock Bowers would maybe even go top 5 in this year's class just based off how things look. So, Vegas is all aboard tight end for the Colts. If you look at the odds there at 14, where will Warren go, and is Loveland going to get there at 14?
Well, it's going to be fascinating to watch because this draft kind of feels like, we always say this about drafts, but as you pointed out, Kevin, there's always big-name quarterbacks or maybe some huge stud that everybody's really interested in. Doesn't it feel like this draft could just go in the first 12 to 14 picks a million different ways this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to factor in, where does Travis Hunter go? Who's one of the best players in college football history and obviously a very unique talent. Abdul Carter, does the foot injury drop him at all? And so I'm definitely curious to see how some of the top picks shake out. But when we get more into the, the tens and the teens, those will be certainly some numbers to pay attention to. And I put out my final mock draft today, actually, for the Colts. And, to tease a little bit or just give you a glimpse, I did not draft tight end in the first round. And it's because Tyler Warren was gone. I traded back, thinking hopefully that Colson Loveland, who was on the board at the time, will still be there. Didn't work out, and ended up going tight end in the second round. So, again, there are certainly different ways to kind of, I guess, fill this jigsaw puzzle. And I know we're beholden to Tyler Warren and drafting a tight end early as possible, but reality kind of tells me that you should probably expect, some things to not go your way. And then typically in these situations, Chris Ballard has not been afraid to trade back and recoup some other draft capital. Especially, I mean, my whole thing is, don't overdraft a guy just because you think, you have to do it. You be sold on that guy. And I definitely think it's one of those things where, Kevin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. How much do you weigh best player available versus like your biggest need when it's tight end? Like, if it's defensive end, cornerback, quarterback, I'm like, okay, get the guy. But when it's tight end, I get it. The Colts have struggled at tight end. It's been one of the worst units in the league the last couple of years, but it's still tight end.
Yeah, I know. I always try to marry the two, best player available with your needs. That's kind of my general approach to it. I also think you have to point out, not only have you struggled there, but it's not like you've had great quarterback play. Like, you've struggled there and had the bad quarterback play. And I think if you shore up that position to a degree, it could help you create a higher floor at quarterback. Because my biggest issue with quarterback, mainly Anthony Richardson, again, is you have to find easy better. You have to be more of a boring passing offense. When I think of that, I think of tight end. So that's where it does fit a whole lot for me.
Real quickly, in a moment, one of my favorite things to do is read what you guys have written. And over the weekend, you both put out your final mock drafts. So we'll address that a little bit, and I'm looking forward to that. But over, under, KB, and James, too. How many trades in the first round?
For the NFL?
The NFL.
Oof.
Gosh, you probably said, like 2.5, 3.5?
Yeah, I would set it at least 2.5.
Last year we didn't have, we only had one, I think, before the Colts picked.
Yeah. But I definitely think that there's going to be some movement there just because of teams maybe getting a little bit desperate and reaching for a player like maybe Shadur Sanders or something.
But it's like, who are you coming up for? I mean, that seems to be the general thought
that's a good point.
This draft. It's like, the Colts, tried to trade up last year. It doesn't seem like there's maybe as many of those guys this year as there were last year.
All right, coming up in a minute, we'll talk more about the upcoming NFL draft. The NBA playoffs are here, and the Pacers are undefeated so far. Tell you all about that next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. That's how you do it in game one of a playoff series. The incomparable Mark Boyle, smooth as always. The Pacers right there with him, man. Defense, taking care of the basketball, scoring at key moments, outside, inside. Miles Turner getting a couple of blocks. What didn't we get in game one on Saturday afternoon, James?
I mean, maybe better shooting from Tyrese Halliburton, but I'm nitpicking there because I thought he played a really great floor game. And then on top of that, I thought Miles' reaction after the game, KB, was really awesome to hear him talk about, being here, hitting the first shot of his first, home opening series in however long. And you could just tell how much it means to him to not only have been through the hard times, but to be the guy to kind of help you build for the future. And I get it, Tyrese was the catalyst and Pascal, but as I've always kind of been hammering home these last few weeks, Miles has been there. All the trade rumors, he's had injuries, he's had some moments where maybe he probably thought I can do more for this team or my role is not as defined as I want it to be with, him and Sabonis. And I feel like he's been a class act through it all. And to hear him kind of give that perspective and a bit of humanity to that moment was really cool to hear. And I think he's he's going to be able to come here and be showered with love and praise for years after he's done because of what he's done throughout his career.
Yeah, I think the only way the Bucks can go zone effectively is if Turner doesn't shoot it well. And he shot it great.
Yeah.
On Saturday. I thought what stood out to me, especially if you were going to list probably the two best Pacer players from Saturday. I mean, hell, you can make a case for Turner, but I'd probably go Siakam and Nembhard. And entering Saturday, I would have said those two have struggled the most of your main core over the last month. So I think that is another encouraging sign. So, I mean, I know I've harped on the first hour, and I'll continue to do it over the next 24 hours, and Rick Carlisle will certainly not be a fan of it coming up tomorrow. But I don't see this developing like last year when both teams got a split in the first two. I didn't think Saturday was a flukish Pacers performance. I don't trust the Bucks. Maybe Lillard will play, and that'll change some things. But if that's the same Milwaukee group, I don't see it changing significantly. And again, I think the Pacers have another gear to go to as well. I mean, they were right at their season average in points. It's not like they had an otherworldly offensive performance either. So, last year, when you look back on game one, Lillard went off. Lillard had 35 in the first half. The Pacers didn't have that at all. So, I think that's an encouraging sign if you're an Indiana fan.
What can we really expect? Let's say Damian Lillard does come back. Does he just get off coming off rehab and having to sit still for even a couple of weeks before that and just all of a sudden has this incredible – now, I wouldn't put it past him because he's so ultra-talented, but what can you honestly expect from him, even in terms of minutes?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. I believe last year he was dealing with the Achilles thing, and he still came out and torched him. So that's obviously a lot different than being out for several weeks and not probably playing a lot of high-level basketball because of the blood clot issues. Now that that's passed, I think the conditioning might not be there. You hear NBA players talk about all the time, take a week off, and it's like that first win, I'm dying out there.
Do you think he'd play a 10-minute stint each half?
Something like that.
Or do you think it's one of these things where they're not putting him out there until he's playing 30 minutes a night? Because I don't want to make too much out of the language, but Milwaukee had him out on Saturday due to return to competition conditioning.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's really the reason, well, couldn't you throw him, again, 10-minute stint each half? I mean, play him with a second unit. You just try to survive a little bit when you don't have Giannis on the floor, I guess.
Yeah, I think it maybe is a feel thing. It's the playoffs, so you bring him back. You want to be cautious, but you don't want to be so cautious where you're like, man, we're not necessarily getting the best version or the best value out of this. So I could see his minutes kind of rising if the game is tight. And, who's to say fourth quarter, 5-point game, and you're like, well, Lil's at his minutes restriction, and you're willing to send him to the bench and live to fight another game? And then got to win 4 of the next 5 to win the series. So I don't know, exactly how they approach it. But I definitely think that Lillard is somebody who can get going and, with 1 or 2 shots. We've seen it before. And it's just, to me, can you wear him down on the other end as well? And also, I think that the factor is, we haven't really talked about it. They did do what we've seen them do in last year's playoff series and obviously throughout the season at times. They pressed the ball. they're going to hound you. And does that factor into just the legs that Tyrese Halliburton, I'm sorry, not Tyrese, but Damian Lillard has as he's bringing the ball up the court? Does that wear him down more because you're shadowing him, you're bumping him, you're making sure you're standing in front of him and not giving that freedom of movement to sort of get a rhythm?
Giannis season low, 1 assist. Again, when we had Rick on last Tuesday, he compared his April run, Giannis, to a bit Jokic-like in his playmaking. He had been averaging 12 assists per game here in the month of April. Again, season low 1. Bucks missing open shots, or the Pacers doing a great job of not letting him be a playmaker?
I think what you said just a moment ago, too, you got to make him work on the other end. Like, wear him out. He comes back, right? I love all the things that the Pacers are doing and what you guys are saying, but if Lillard does come back, make him tired, right?
So to go back to Kevin, you were asking.
Yeah, do you think the Giannis 1 assist, you think that more to do with Bucks simply missing open shots?
Sorry, kid.
Or you think that was the Pacers doing a great job of, hey, when he makes a spin move, that's when you double, that's when you try and, do some things to alter his playmaking?
I thought they had some really good defensive possessions where they were able to run the three-point shooters off the line, get a hand up, or at least force them to take contested threes. I thought they got a little bit, out of rotations or out of whack later in the game with some of the open looks they gave up. But by that point, you had the game pretty much in hand. But early on, I thought that the way that they attacked and Giannis was incredible. And one thing I would like to follow up with him, just pick his brain on is, and really Tyrese as well, when it comes to you being a superstar, it's like, the team has a game plan, right, to defend you a certain way. But how does that shift when the defender you're facing changes? Like, does Giannis's approach change when he has Nembhard on him versus having Nesmith versus having Siakam? And then you also have the team philosophy when that shifts as well. Because I'm like, man, these guys are like PhDs in basketball. Because I'm looking at Giannis. He figured it out to a certain degree for himself. But I'm like, man, how do you still score 36 when everything's being thrown at you like that? And obviously a lot of that has to do with him being a great player. But to get back to your question, KB, I think early on they really they defended very well. And then also, if you're young and you're not used to those moments, you're a little nervous. This isn't Chris Middleton taking these shots.
Right.
These guys who haven't been there before.
I mean, that's starting lineup. I mean, it's unbelievable. Ryan Rollins and then, Kuzma and Prince go goose egg. I just I know we're making Corbin look up some wild stats. Corbin, you said you looked up the last time 2 tight ends have been taken in an NFL draft here in the first 14 picks. And what was the year on that?
1973.
So 1973 if Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland both go before the Colts at 14. I'm trying to think of the last time an NBA team in a playoff game had their starting 2 and 3 guys have 0 points in a game.
I thought it should be a Scotty pop quiz question or something like that later this week.
And again, not due to injury, just due to sucking.
Yeah, tough.
I mean, like, it's not or foul trouble.
Yeah, just
I guess
bad
even
basketball.
if you
no,
want
I
to go.
mean Kuzma played ample.
I mean, he's got to start
time.
Gary Trent right tomorrow.
I would think so.
He's got to get more minutes.
But
that's
post
for sure.
game, he was not like Doc Rivers was not as much. I don't know, frustrating or ready to even say. Sometimes you'll get coaches. I mean, Rick said it to us before. Hey, we need to look at everything. We need to evaluate everything. We need to make lineup changes, and that pretty much says something is going to happen. Doc Rivers was not going there in the immediate aftermath, which is great news, I think, for Pacers fans. But I don't know. Maybe Lillard all of a sudden comes back, and that moves Rollins out of the rotation. I'll be very interested to see. I don't see the series shifting, I guess, until Lillard makes his appearance, if at all.
And then it's just you're hoping, if you're the Bucks right now, that 2-man game and maybe a Gary Trent along the way provides you something, because they were devoid of everything except Giannis.
I mean, their best lineup there late, if you really want to look at that fourth quarter, was Giannis on the bench. And that has been Eric Name, who we had on Friday, James, your colleague from The Athletic. He mentioned that to us Friday. He's like, Giannis is closed oftentimes with that bench group.
Yeah.
The Kevin Porter Jr., the Gary Trent, the A.J. Green. Gosh, every time I think of A.J. Green, I just think I'm talking about the NFL dude.
That's how I feel with Braden Smith and Braden Smith.
I know. Yes, I do the same thing. There are times I say Braden Smith's name on air, and I'm like, should I clarify
Yeah.
which Braden Smith it is? And then, Portis, and then Porter, and I'm like, a lot of these guys are juniors. But the Bucks just throw me off with a lot of these names.
Real quick, I want to throw one at you. I thought Kevin Porter Jr. had a rough game and didn't give them that secondary creator to sort of, give Giannis.
I'm still a little worried
else.
about him. I think he's crazy enough to have a game where where we sit here the morning after and be like, man, Porter Jr. was the difference.
Absolutely, but I'm saying you're kind of riding the wave with him. Like, which version are you getting? The version they got in game one is not one that is going to help them win. I thought that, man, he got into some really weird action, took some bad shots, and when he's not creating, it puts even more on Giannis to be like, okay, defend, rebound, score, and carry us. And again, that's fine. It certainly helps. But when you're looking up and you're like, okay, Giannis has 16 points, but they're shooting, pretty poorly from the field, and they only got 40 points, you live with that.
Reminder, Chris Ballard pre-draft press conference a little bit later this morning. James Boyd going to head out here in a few minutes for that. We'll certainly chat about it later in the show if there's anything of note from the Colts GM. Thursday, 8 o'clock, round one. The Colts sit with 14th overall. Plenty of draft conversation coming our way. And the Colts are back in the building. I can't recall, James, many times they've had this where their offseason program has started the same week as the draft. I feel like it's usually like a week or two prior to that. But I bring that up to say it's strength conditioning for the first 2 weeks. It's team meetings. You're not going to see on-field stuff, but you will start to see some pictures of players back in the building here for Shane Steichen and company, third year at the helm. And as much as you don't want to, I think, overblow what this time of year can be all about, I think Shane Steichen said at the Combine, he needs to do a better job at making sure that message of the standard is instilled into that group, and don't just say it the first day of training camp and think that everybody on your roster is going to adhere to it all year long.
It's Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5. The Fan, you guys both do such a great job of covering the Colts, and both have issued your final mock drafts.
Perfection.
Kind of interesting the way it all fell out. How did you see it in conjunction with doing it with your other athletic brethren?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly enjoyed my final mock draft. I did try to take it very serious. There's times where I think I've asked the fan base to send me theirs, and I'll react to theirs, or I'll have ones in there where it's like, okay, the dream scenario. But I thought this was very realistic where, again, in my mock draft kind of started off, there was no Tyler Warren available. He got picked at number 7 by the Jets. And then from there, Colson Loveland was still available at 14, but I was thinking, man, if I could trade back a little bit and still get him, maybe that's possible. Now I traded back to 20 with Denver and picked up actually a higher pick, another third-round pick in exchange for the number 14 pick and number 117 pick. I swapped with Denver for the number 20 and number 51 pick.
Look at you.
So, yeah.
Wheeling and dealing.
I thought that was, a very realistic type of deal that they would do in real life. And, again, missed out on Loveland. Got Jahad Campbell there, who was still on the board from Alabama, and then went Mason Taylor in round 2 from LSU. So if that's your first 2 days of the draft, first 2 picks of the draft, I feel like not only the Colts fan base, who I, love to subscribe, listen to us, but the real front office will be pretty pleased with that.
And Kevin, I also thought it was interesting towards the end of yours too. Not a kicker later on, but you did go Curtis Rourke at quarterback. I think it was a 6th round you went?
Yeah, I think a day 3 quarterback makes sense. The thing about Rourke, I know like one of the bigger knocks on him is just his health. I'm like, well, if he's your 3rd string quarterback, he's not going to be exposed to many health issues. I mean, 3rd string quarterback, you're randomly going to need him to be a backup on game day. It's not like you're going to need him to be a starter for whatever, a dozen games in a season there. And I just think Rourke, honestly, watched him in college. I thought he was just steady. I thought he was just solid. It wasn't uber flashy. It wasn't anything that maybe will wow NFL scouts from an arm strength standpoint, or how much did the ACL obviously hinder him making plays with his legs. I don't think he made a ton at Ohio prior to that, but sure. You're not going to part of the reason why I'm not all aboard this, like, take a quarterback on day 2. I'm like, where does this guy get reps? If you draft a quarterback in round 2 or 3, you're pretty much stunting that entire first year of development, right? Aren't all the reps going to Richardson and Daniel Jones?
100%.
So that is confusing to me. But I go back to, again, what Chris Ballard said at the season-ending presser, James. The first thing he said about Anthony Richardson wasn't about his inconsistent play on the field, wasn't about the quarterback standard, it was about his availability. So if that continues to worry you, and he is your starter, that means you're going to need Daniel Jones to start games. Well, if Daniel Jones is starting games and Anthony Richardson's hurt, that means you need a backup for Daniel Jones. Jason Bean's the only other quarterback on the roster. So that's where I kind of fall into this, finding another quarterback on day 3. Not going to get a lot of reps, not saying anything like that, but frankly, I think you just need another arm.
Maybe it's something I'll ask Ballard today in a roundabout way, but just his thoughts on behind those two guys, Jason Bean and others, because the more I think about it, yeah, you're absolutely right. You do probably want to have somebody that's a little bit more NFL ready. I know with Jason Bean, it was kind of like, is he a wide receiver? Is he a quarterback? And he's got some great, physical traits.
And he also got hurt.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the preseason.
Yeah, he was out for a while with an ankle thing. So that's certainly something to consider, especially if I would assume they trade back on day 3 and get a couple more picks. And it's like at that point, if you got, 2 or 3 picks in the last round or 6th round or whatever, you're more likely to throw a dart that way at quarterback.
Well, I would encourage anybody who's interested in this stuff to go to 1075thefan.com, find Kevin's final mock draft, go to theathletic.com, find James. You both did a great job of really explaining why you made each pick and going in depth into what that player can provide the team. And look, it could go a million different ways. We all know that, but it's food for thought. And I think in both of your drafts, you both addressed big needs that the Colts have, and they've got needs all over the place. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
I think if I'm Rick Carlisle, sitting here Monday morning, and I know Rick's probably well moved on to game 2. Certainly, I think I timed the post-game presser, I believe, at the 22-second mark. He had already brought up last year's game 1 versus game 2. I had pegged the over-under at 30 seconds into the post-game presser. He didn't even get 30 seconds of game 1 praise for his team before he brought that up. I'm probably most encouraged by my bench. I think that can oftentimes worry you because it's such a strength for the Pacers. It honestly might be their greatest strength. It's like, no. We actually have dudes we trust and we can rely on in these settings. It was a huge reason why. I think they were able to outlast Milwaukee last year, outlast the Knicks last year. 2 banged-up basketball teams. You relied on your bench. You picked them up full court, et cetera, et cetera. And that was a huge reason why you got to the Eastern Conference Finals. You think about all those guys they played yesterday or Saturday off the bench. Toppin, solid. T.J. McConnell, solid. Matherin and Walker, both in their first big, I guess Walker maybe got into a playoff game last year, but like their first real playoff moments, both of them contributed. I thought Thomas Bryant actually gave you serviceable minutes, and I didn't think that was a slam dunk that he'd be in the rotation. So, sometimes you get into these playoff games and very quickly you're like, oh, that dude doesn't belong. Or I can't trust that guy on the floor. Doc Rivers has got that conversation, or at least he needs to, with some of his starters. Outside exiting game 1, I don't think Rick Carlisle has that with anybody. Now, it might develop on the road. Oftentimes you see that on the road, but I would fully expect the same 10-man rotation coming up tomorrow.
The other thing that was kind of interesting, too, a guy that has hurt the Pacers at times in the past was really kind of a non-factor, and that was Brook Lopez.
Yeah, he definitely was not very
Turner
effective.
Certainly outplayed him.
Yeah, I thought Turner, did a better just overall rendition of what Brook Lopez usually does, knock threes down and block shots. I thought Miles had a really good game on both ends of the floor. And again, you didn't have your A game offensively. You didn't have some crazy shooting performance, as Kevin has alluded to throughout the show, but you played really sound basketball, and you did it together, which is, the Pacers might be one of the deepest teams, if not the deepest team in the playoffs, when you consider just how much they usually get from the others. And I think that's one of their greatest strengths is that you never really know who it's going to be. And hats off to Andrew Nembhard again because, I know you mentioned the other day, Jeff, just how good he's been throughout the playoffs, and he did it again in this game. Hadn't shot the ball well going into the playoffs, the last 10 games, and had been struggling, but lights come on. And Nembhard really got him going early. I thought he set the tone early defensively, a lot of strong layups to the basket. And he's somebody that you continuing to gain that confidence about when it comes to high-level and pressure basketball.
All right, Jeremiah Johnson coming up top of the hour. He'll tell us more about the Pacers' 117-98 victory over the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 1 this past Saturday. In the meantime, Corbin, let's check it down. All right, lead story, KB. JB is off to the Colts training facility right now, so it'll be you and I and Corbin for the rest of the show.
He went deuces because Mark Dykton called in sick once he saw how many runs the Reds scored. Is that correct?
I think I got a phone call on the way in at about 6:05 this morning is what happened.
Mark, I'm coming to see you right now, buddy. I hope you got something cold for me brewing.
Anything big happens, check back in with us, all right?
We'll do.
All right. We do have the Colts and Chris Ballard meeting with the media at 9 a.m. this morning. KB, what do you want to hear? What do you think you'll hear?
Yeah, as we were talking about, I always think it's interesting how many blue chip prospects Ballard views in any draft class. He's usually pretty transparent on that. As nerdy as it sounds, I do think kicker matters a whole lot in the NFL. Why with Matt Gay in terms of, April 9th, April 10th, whenever that exact date was on that, and I fully trust that James Boyd will ask a lot of questions that are not coming to my mind right now.
Deep philosophical questions that forces Ballard to reveal his true plans. That's what I'm expecting from James Boyd today. All right, have a great day, JB. We've talked about the Pacers going 1-up on the Milwaukee Bucks in their best-of-7 Eastern Conference first-round series. Yesterday in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Celtics defeated the Orlando Magic 103-86. Cavaliers take a 1-0 lead over the Miami Heat, 121-100. Donovan Mitchell had 30, but how about Ty Jerome had 28 points and Darius Garland had 27? I watched some of that game, and here's the crazy part. A 21-point win, those three guys scoring. I didn't think Cleveland played all that well.
Yeah, Cleveland, I think, showed it, a couple weeks ago with the Pacers. Jerome, especially when he exited midway through the third quarter and he already had, whatever it was, 25, something like that, in the game. Cleveland's got a lot of depth, and so far in the East, all the home teams have won. It's not, it's too premature to start to look ahead, but just something to keep an eye on and when these series could get done here and possibly start to see what the Eastern Conference semifinals look like. Tonight, just two games, right? Pistons-Knicks, I believe, is the first game coming up tonight. I was kind of hoping we get a third game here on the docket.
Clippers-Nuggets at 10 o'clock. A little bit too late for
our
me
lone overtime game, right?
Yep. That was also two games yesterday. Oklahoma City showing their fangs, KB. They beat the Grizzlies 131-80.
Someone give Zach Edey a hug.
Whew. And Golden State.
And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't even have an MVP type
Nothing
of
crazy
afternoon for them. So, yes, very impressive from the Thunder. Out west, we did see two road teams. Again, T-Wolves got it done, and late last night, the Rockets not protecting home floor, a season-low 85 points. Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, what you would expect.
And the old guys getting it done. They are still pretty good. The Cubs yesterday, sorry, Mark Dykton, they lose by a score of 3-2. Meanwhile, the Reds dropped 24 on the Orioles in a little interleague play. 24.
Gosh, as much as I saw the runs continuing to pile up and thinking, man, I cannot wait to talk to Mark tomorrow morning, and then I was informed very late last night that Mark was under the weather, and so he wouldn't be coming in on this Monday morning.
Did he wake you up this morning at like 5:45, Corbin? Is that what happened?
No, he called me about maybe 6:15.
Okay, so yeah, he was. He had the sniffles, right? The Easter sniffles. I did think to myself, oh boy, the Reds are going to use up all their runs here for the rest of the spring. They might not score again until Father's Day.
Oh, don't say that. Don't speak it into existence. The Indianapolis Indians win at home yesterday, beat the Toledo Mud Hens by a score of 10-6 as they were over there at Victory Field, and I believe they are off tonight. That's what's happening in the world of sports right here, right now. KB and I will be back in a moment, talk a little bit more about what the Colts will be doing later on today, more on the NBA playoffs, and even some national tickling. We'll do it next here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. One down and a whole bunch to go, but Kevin Bowen, that was pretty impressive. Taking care of business at home, going up against an overmatched Milwaukee team, putting them behind early and never really letting them back into the game. That's everything you ever want out of a game one, isn't it?
Yeah, I tweeted out after the game, I thought it was clinical, and I want to make sure, I add a little bit more to what I mean by that. I didn't think the Pacers played out of their mind. I didn't think they shot it at a historic rate. I thought it was clinical in handling game one playoff pressure on your home floor. This is no longer house money Pacers. This is no longer a plucky underdog. Hey, we won our first playoff game in 6 years, blah, blah, blah. No, you're the heavy favorite, especially without Lillard, to win this series. So how do you handle the take care of business type moments when the other team has the best player in the series? And I thought from the opening tip, especially that first half, you were, again, clinical. 2 turnovers in a half of basketball. That's insane. And so that, I thought, was what the Pacers did a great, great job of. You need to take care of business. You need to jump on the Bucks early without Lillard. All of that. I thought the Pacers were outstanding. And again, I probably sold them short. Last week, I was a bit of a broken record saying they've got the second best player in the series and the third and the fourth and the fifth. You might need to even go further on that list because in game one, they had the best players 2 through 7 in that game. And I really think the Bucks are going to struggle mightily without Lillard and trying to get one on the road until he returns.
It's Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd. I'm Jeff Rickard, Corbin Lingenfelter in the seat today as Mark Dykton is off. JB is off to Colts headquarters because Chris Ballard's speaking at 9 a.m. this morning. I've asked you kind of what you want to hear from him, but the one thing we have learned about Chris Ballard over the years is without coming out and telling you what he's going to do, when you always go back and look at the things he said leading up to the draft or something like that, you generally go, yeah, he was pretty much telling us how it was going to go without telling us how it was going to go.
Yeah, and one thing I brought up in the opening hour, and I don't know, maybe it's a conversation for tomorrow's show, I'm not sold on Tyler Warren being overwhelmingly higher on the board than Colston Loveland, if at all. Think about specifically what the Colts need at tight end. And again, I say specifically for a reason. You need to diversify that room. Warren, the thought with Warren is, great tight end in terms of balance. You put him in the huddle on first down, you aren't tipping your hand. You put him in the huddle on second down, you're not tipping your hand. Can block, can be a receiver, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Loveland is more of your pass-catching tight end. Well, if you really want to nitpick the Colts tight end room, they can block pretty well. They re-signed their best blocker. And Mo Alley Cox, I think Drew Ogletree, that would be probably more of his strength. They just can't catch it and catch it to the level that you need them to. And so that's where I think Loveland could factor in. And if you're in the camp that you feel like Loveland's shoulder injury impacted him as a blocker a decent amount at Michigan, and you feel like with the surgery and this rehab, he could be a better blocker. He's younger than Warren. If you want to play that game as well, that's something that is a little bit on my mind as Thursday rolls around.
Was there anything that Chris Ballard said to us going back to the combine that has kind of stuck with you, and you say to yourself, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye on that"?
Well, I think he's still very bullish on his drafts, and so I bring that up to say, should we expect a normal Ballard draft? Should we expect the uber athletic dudes? Should we expect trade backs? That's kind of been his MO. Again, free agency sounded different, and he acted very differently. The draft, to me, did not sound very different in his self-evaluation, self-critique, however you want to label what he did in January at the season-ending press conference. So, I'll certainly be curious what he says today. And also today, for those that aren't totally up to date with the offseason calendar, 2 things. One, Colts players are back in the building, so you will start to see some pictures and things. I think Anthony Richardson will meet the media and maybe even Steichen tomorrow.
Is it just strength and conditioning stuff right now?
Yeah, and meetings.
Yeah.
We're still about a couple weeks to about a month away from the full OTAs, 11-on-11, things like that here in the spring. There's a ramp-up period. But the other aspect is this is the first time outside of the owners' meetings Ballard has talked about his offseason, going back to free agency. So just that general approach to, no, we wanted to pay Daniel Jones $14 million, and we wanted to go after, Cam Bynum and Travaris Ward in the manner that we did. I don't know how much he would say it, but, if any of my colleagues are maybe in their cars, I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit more on the Travarius Ward situation, on upping the ante. I mean, those are Ward's comments to JMV when he joined him right after that signing occurred, of basically Ward thinking he was signing with the Saints, his hometown team. And then all of a sudden, according to Ward, the Colts came in at the last minute and said, no, we'll sweeten the pot. That's a very un-Chris Ballard Colt type of thing to do here in free agency. Why? Why now? Was that the specific player? Is that hey, after 8 years, you got to do things differently? Be curious if Ballard would expand on that.
I wonder if there was, at any point, someone like Jim Irsay whispering in his ear, like, look, if you really like a guy, just go get him. Don't worry about the other stuff. If you really like him and think he's going to be a part of what you want to do for the next several years, just go get him.
Do we think the Andrew Nembhard shoulder into players is a great move, or is he getting away with something? If that was happening on the reverse, would we be calling for an offensive foul?
Of course we would, because it's not our guy.
It's unbelievable how he can just dislodge the defender like that. And seemingly, I'm like, wait, are they going to call that offensive? He just moved Brooke Lopez 5 feet.
But if you're not going to call it, you continue to do that, right?
Keep on doing it.
If they're not going to call it, I guess it's okay.
He was great on Saturday. And, outside of the bench, that might be another thing you'd put on the most encouraging list from the game, Jeff, of Andrew Nembhard and Pascal Siakam. Because I thought over the last month or so, both of them have not been what you're used to. I mean, those are two players you largely, and my hand is raised, I largely take for granted. They're just so darn reliable. Pascal Siakam, I mean, it's like David West on steroids with just how reliable of an adult performance he can give you. I mean, David West, think back to those Paul George teams.
Loved David West.
You're on the brink in Atlanta. You are struggling in those early series. Before you got to Miami, you throw the ball to David West, and the adult would take over. That's kind of what Siakam, I would say Siakam, frankly, gives you maybe a little bit more than that. And then Nembhard as well. On a night where Halliburton is not as video game-like as you're used to, and, teams are going to try and take away Halliburton. That's obviously a given. You need more of that. So I thought Nembhard and Siakam in particular, outstanding.
And you bring up Halliburton, too, and you know that teams are going to game plan against him because he is the point guard, and he can score, and he dishes. And you say, okay, we're not going to let him score a bunch of points. But I think in some ways that plays into his hands. He's like, okay, I'll just go keep finding the open guy and making the right pass and the right read and keep the offense moving. I thought that was the one thing that I took away from game one in his play. Offensively, he wasn't terrific necessarily, but he continued to take care of the basketball, and he kept hitting guys exactly where they needed to be hit with the ball, where they needed to have it. And I love that about him. He finds a way to impact the game without necessarily scoring something.
I feel like Nembhard could start at safety for the Colts.
You like that shoulder. I dig that. The other thing I thought was really cool, too, is just the way that the Pacers, we've talked about how deep they are, but so many guys hurt you in game one. How many guys really impacted that game for the Pacers on Saturday afternoon? Probably 7, 8?
Oh,
Maybe more?
Yeah,
9?
I would say long. I mean, if we're really going to dissect game one, who was the worst Indiana Pacer?
Was there one?
I mean, if you go off pure shooting, it'd be Halliburton or Mathurin was 2 of 7. But that's ludicrous to label either of them as bad when Halliburton's got 10 assists and 1 turnover or whatever the final numbers were. And again, Mathurin gets the foul line. And guys just don't come off the bench, get to the foul line 8 times in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever he played. But Mathurin provides that for you. So again, I wish we had Rick on almost like the morning after the game, just because I know he's going to be full-on Game 2 mode tomorrow.
Game 1 won't even that won't even have existed.
He's not going to want to talk about it at all. Hell, last night in their Saturday afternoon, his post-game presser, 23 seconds into that presser, he's already bringing up last year Game 1 versus Game 2. I tweeted out as soon as the game ended, I go, can already hear Rick Carlisle bringing up last year's Game 1 versus Game 2. And I thought he'd maybe give us a minute. I thought he'd give us a minute recap in what he liked about Game 1. We didn't even get 30 seconds. Yeah. Before he brought it up.
I thought maybe the most interesting thing that happened in the postgame came from Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm going to let you listen in on that and get your reaction to that coming up in just a minute here as we continue on a Monday morning, the Fan Morning Show. James Boyd is off to Colts camp to get ready for the Chris Ballard presser at 9 o'clock. It's Kevin Bowen, Jeff Rickard, Corbin Lingenfelter in here today as Mark is completely hungover after the wrestling match last night. Is that kind of what we're taking at this point in time?
I think the Reds did more than WrestleMania.
No, that just started the drinking day, and then the WrestleMania just finished it off.
Mhm.
It's probably what happened. All right, we'll continue in a moment. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Still a Victory Monday. Thanks for joining us this morning, however you may be listening at 107.5 The Fan, 93.5. You can also go to 93.1. I tried this the other day, Kevin. Great reception everywhere around the cities. I was running errands all day long. 93.1, go, and then hit the HD button. So it's normally WIBC, but then you hit the HD button, really crystal clear, great signal, lots of ways to do it. You can also talk to your smart speaker and say play 1075thefan.com, which I do in the kitchen every morning, getting ready for the show. And you can go to the app, download the app. That's a great way to go. Lots of ways to find
Yeah,
us.
shout out to our diehards on the YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
1075 The Fan. Always a great convo there each and every morning, so appreciate that.
Yeah, always enjoy having people around. We were talking about post-game for the Pacers after that Saturday afternoon win, and I thought Giannis was funny, always thinking, always looking around. He was answering questions in the postgame, and somebody asked him a question about, all right, well, you've seen the Pacers in game one, and they kind of took you to the woodshed. What kind of adjustments do you need to make? What are the things you need to fix before game two? And Giannis wasn't buying it.
I've been in the playoffs a lot, and I feel like the coaching staff of the other teams like watching these interviews, and if I come up with a solution right now, they're going to kind of try to counter it. She's wearing the Indiana Pacers polo, so I don't know if she's not asking no questions, so she got to work. See what I'm talking about? So I think I have an idea. I'm not going to shed it. But again, we're going to watch film, and hopefully we can do better for game two.
I love that. He looks up, and in the corner, there's a Pacers employee with a polo shirt on. He's like, I'm not telling you guys anything. Come on. Let's go.
Probably some poor intern that's just in there to like gather the audio and transcribe the quotes there. What do you think those changes would be?
They got to get other guys to step up and help, and I think you're on the money. If I were Doc Rivers, I would probably make a change to my starting lineup. Two guys that were completely ineffective. How about two starting guys in the NBA that combined for 0 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists between the two of them? And Kyle Kuzma was zeros across the board.
Well, especially your starting shooting, I guess if you want to call them your shooting guard, your small forward as well. Theoretically, those are the positions that you want to do a chunk of scoring from. Yeah, just astonishing. I would start Gary Trent Jr., I guess, and of course this is all Lillard dependent. This is all assuming that Lillard, I guess, doesn't play. If he does play, I would assume he'd slide back in the starting lineup. There's part of me that's like, okay, if the minutes restriction or the return to competition conditioning is real for Lillard, maybe he only plays whatever, minutes with the bench group. How do you kind of utilize him? But I don't see Milwaukee's others stepping up enough away from home. Sometimes your others can play well at home in the postseason. Sometimes you get. Honestly, I think we saw a lot of that from the Pacers bench, Cleveland's bench last night. I mean, if anybody watched that Cleveland game, it was really their second unit that pushed them. Right. Oklahoma City. It's not like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had this absurd game yesterday, but at home in the playoffs, I think. Whatever, you just feel that emotional lift and you play pretty well. Whereas on the road, it can be different for these role guys. So, Gary Trent Jr. is probably the one that I would come back to. Honestly, Kuzma's so crazy. I might just move him to that second unit so he can dominate the ball a little bit more. And if you look at Milwaukee, their best group in that game was Giannis at the bench. Kevin Porter Jr., Green, Bobby Portis, and certainly Gary Trent Jr. So, Doc Rivers was pretty uncommittal, though, post-game. I mean, usually you will get a coach that kind of hints like, yeah, we need more. And it was more like, no, that's an anomaly. So I'll be curious to see what it looks like come 7 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, 6:30 airtime here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Mark Boyle will have the play-by-play for you. Around the rest of the NBA, some crazy things as well. I mean, you're watching Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler just do what they've done their entire careers with Golden State. They go get a 10-point win on the road against Houston. And as JB had said earlier, they're not really playing like a 7 seed. They're playing like a team that's going to be really dangerous and not an easy out. And Steph is hitting crazy shots off 1 foot. His body leaning 45 degrees. He's attacking the basket, and he's getting just the crazy things that only Steph can do. I thought that was pretty interesting with that. Also, Denver, I'm watching that game for a minute, and there's Russell Westbrook going up against James Harden as the Nuggets take on the Clippers. And for a second, I'm like, wait, which decade am I watching right now? Where did that come from all of a sudden, KB?
Westbrook actually had a couple very important plays.
He did.
in that game. How about the Jeff Van Gundy Jokic?
I was going to say that was my favorite
Ball.
part. Explain that to people.
Yeah, so, one of my favorite NBA memories is certainly Jeff Van Gundy on the leg of Alonzo Mourning, bottom of the pile. Hell, what was that now, 20-some years ago? Maybe even more than
He's
that.
Bouncing on the floor.
I had kind of forgotten Jeff Van Gundy was back in the NBA.
Yeah.
I'm like, I guess he isn't on my, airwaves anymore. So you have, Jokic is the king of this. And honestly, Halliburton tries to do this a lot. When the ball goes out of bounds, you're either trying to get it back into play very, very quickly, catch a defense off guard, or B, you're trying to stall like none other. Jokic is the king staller of it all. He's trying to get the ball back from the Clippers bench. I think there was another Clippers assistant that had the ball, but there's Jeff Van Gundy in there wrestling with Jokic. And that might have been, honestly, it was such a bad weekend for playoff basketball outside of that game. That might have been my favorite moment.
Yeah, we didn't have any. That was the only close game of the entire weekend, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but at all. Rockets Warriors, shockingly, Rosie looks at me at about midnight last night. My tummy hurts. So I'm like, well, do you see how much candy you just consumed in the last 12 hours? So I actually dialed up a little bit of Rockets Warriors there late. They were kind of close, Houston, but I felt like game ones had the feel of opening round of the NCAA tournament. We really just didn't get much yesterday or Saturday, for that matter, in some late game situations. The Pistons had the Knicks on the ropes there through about 2.5 quarters, and then Cameron Payne and the Knicks went on a huge run there to steal game one. So again, in the East, all 4 home teams won. Out West, the only road teams to get the wins, Warriors and T-Wolves, which, when you look at those series on papers, I don't think that's the most shocking.
No, and it's surprised to your point earlier this morning, just 2 games on the NBA docket tonight. And this is where TV networks start to stretch these out a little bit.
Which I guess
right?
the Pacers could have played tonight, but they've got the Mary J. Blige concert.
Right.
And obviously you're not going to go back-to-backs with the Sunday games. And the reason why those Sunday games were what they were is they wanted the play-in teams to have the extra day to get ready for that. So, we will get 3 games tomorrow night. Of course, the Pacers being one of them. Just to remind everybody as well, because I know a lot of people are, okay, what exactly channel-wise are we watching for Pacers here in the postseason? Obviously, our airwaves will carry everything, and you will get Jeremiah Johnson going to join us here in 5. You will get that crew. Kristen Airy, Quinn Buckner, JJ, they will carry all of these games as long as they're not on ABC. Tomorrow, I can confirm this with JJ, but I think it's just like a regular season game, unless I don't know who has NBA TV that's not blocked out locally, but that's what the Pacers are on nationally tomorrow. So it will be your FanDuel crew, your Bally crew, your Fox Sports Indiana crew of Kristen Airy, Quinn, and JJ tomorrow. You won't have the Michael Grady, Stephanie White balance like you had on Saturday.
All right, coming up in a moment, as the man said, Jeremiah Johnson stops by to talk about Game 1, what's ahead in Game 2. It's all about the Pacers here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. My two favorite parts of a Pacers radio broadcast, when Mark starts singing Dagger, and, of course, anything with Slick and Boom Baby is always good, but it's always fun to watch some TV, too. We have a terrific crew. We like talking to them here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan, and we are pleased to be joined by FanDuel's own Jeremiah Johnson here on the Payless Liquors hotline this morning. It's just, I keep going back to it, JJ. You've been to so many games there at the field house. The environment from 30 minutes before tip-off to even afterwards and halftime and everything else, that's as good as I can remember it, man. That was good stuff on Saturday, was it not?
Well, the best is that it is as good as I remember it. It is similar, and it's game one of a first-round series, but I can still remember, conference finals games. And those were even those games just last season when you're playing the Knicks, you're playing the Bucks in a game 6. To have the field house have that energy for game one at 1 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, it's a tribute to the fans. And really, you can talk so much about there's random games in December or January that have that intensity, but nothing is quite like the playoffs. And the players brought it from the opening tip. The fans match that energy. And you can't really go to your concession stand or the bathroom unless you're going to be able to get back pretty quickly. You don't want to miss anything this time of the year.
Jeremiah Johnson and company, they will have you at 7 o'clock tomorrow. They are your outlet here coming up in game 2. We'll certainly have it on our airways, but TV-wise, it will be Chris, Quinn, and JJ 7 o'clock for game 2. What struck you the most in game 1? I sit here on this Monday morning, JJ, and I'm like, if I'm Rick Carlisle, I don't know what I am mad about. I just thought there were so many things in the positive department for you. What stood out to you the most, though?
Yeah, that's a good point because at halftime, I always walk from the set down to the court, and I have one or two questions with an assistant coach. And on Saturday, it was Jenny Busick. And I wanted to say, is this as perfect of a first half as you could have diagrammed it? You follow the game plan exactly to a T, and then, you realize there are still 2 quarters yet to play. So you don't want to offer so many superlatives when you still have to finish the game off. But I would guess if I had a chance to look at the game plan, everything that they focused on that they wanted to do, they pretty much were able to accomplish, maybe with the exception of the fouling of Giannis. But in some ways, I don't know that necessarily was a bad thing. I'm not going to say in game 2 you want to just hack a Giannis, but it got him off his game a little bit. I think he was a little concerned about the free throw line and his accuracy or lack thereof. And again, credit the fans. I think they got in his head a little bit with the count to 10 or 11 or 12. So maybe that's one of the things you don't want to repeat is, especially early, you don't want in the first quarter to see him just go to the free throw line 10 or 11 times or 12, whatever it was. But I don't know that they could have fault with anything. And I do think as you continue to watch this series, the fast break points are going to tell the story. When the Pacers beat the Bucks in March, they had a 31-3 advantage in fast break points. And those are numbers that you just don't believe. And they still needed that Tyrese Halliburton 4-point play to win that game. So it's one of those things you almost have to count on is you're going to have, hopefully, 15 or so more fast break points than the Bucks. Even though if Giannis gets the ball, he would like to get out and go. The Pacers did a fantastic job in their transition defense. So much is made about the way they want to run offensively, but they run back as well as anybody in the NBA. And the Bucks talked all about how they wanted to eliminate the Pacers' fast break points. Even though they got back, the Pacers, their execution in the transition game is so good, it doesn't even matter necessarily if they get back. So I am going to be watching in game 2 of an adjustment. The Bucks know they're going to give up some in transition. Can they exploit the Pacers on the other glass? Can they get some offensive rebounds? We saw some of those in the second half. They're not a team that normally focuses on that, but could they decide this is one way they could get back into the game? Because it has been, over the course of the season or maybe even the last couple of seasons, an area that the Pacers have struggled at times.
JJ, you're a man after my own heart, and I love watching you work sometimes because I love the really good sideline reporters and what they do. You're keeping your eye off the ball a lot of times. You're looking for those great stories or great things. One of the things that I see consistently with this Pacers coaching staff that I love, and I don't think they get enough love for it, and it's clear why Rick has won an NBA championship and why these teams are going deep into the playoffs. Every time out, is got so much structure and so much gets done. That doesn't happen a lot in the NBA, believe it or not. Talk to me about the things that you see and that go on in their timeouts, because they do work in those timeouts.
Yeah, one of the things you have to give a lot of credit to is Rick Carlisle, because he gives each of the assistant coaches a voice and the confidence to speak up and to speak, to any player on the team at any time. And now they all have their points of emphasis, but during a normal timeout, a lot of what you see is Rick Carlisle, Mike Weiner, and Lloyd Pierce will have a little conversation, but it's not, Rick talking and them listening. Sometimes it's them offering the first words. He's sort of soaking everything in. And at that same time, Jenny Busick and Jim Boylan are dominating the huddle, usually with something related to defense. And they've done a good job this entire season of improving the defense. But as they have said in a series like this, they've got to change things over the course of the game and show a guy like Giannis different looks. So a lot of times if there's going to be a timeout, you'll see a different look or coverage coming out of the timeout than what they had done previously. And so if the Bucks think it's going to go one way, they're going to change things up. And then watch even during, like, let's say there's an out of bounds under a basket and it's on the other end of the floor. Jenny will get up, Lloyd will get up, Mike will get up, and they'll all yell something to somebody. And they either know the play that is likely to be run or they want to switch up the defense. And just also credit to the players, because they're not just in one ear out the other. They're listening. They trust that staff. And so in a series where there are going to be adjustments game to game, I already asked some of the players so we could have some content. I was thinking before the series, what are some good questions that will be relevant in a Game 3 pregame show? And so I asked some of them about, in the adjustment game, why do you trust this staff? What do they do that gives you confidence that you can make those adjustments? And they gave me, some really good answers. And so it's the continuity is big as well. A lot of these, Jenny and Mike had been with Rick Carlisle in Dallas, but the last 2 to 3 seasons, they've all been through so much, same staff, same players, and that can't help but give you a little bit of an advantage. And all of their experience is so beneficial. So the staff deserves a shout out. Good job by you asking that question. And good for the fans to watch this, whether it's on TV or at the game, what they're doing over the course of a game.
JJ, you think Lillard plays tomorrow?
I kind of think so. I mean, the health is obviously the most important thing, but they have said the reason he did not play in Game 1 was return to play conditioning, and it wasn't anything related to the effects from the blood clot. So if that is in fact the case, and you had 2 days to ramp up your conditioning, and the sense of urgency. I mean, I kind of in my head thought if the Bucks would have stolen Game 1, maybe you give him another few days to get up to speed, and maybe he would not have played until Friday. But given what matters, and maybe the way he was yapping a little bit at that end of that game, I guess I would be surprised if he is not playing with Milwaukee on Tuesday night. And I'll give him an appreciation for firing the Pacers up at the end of that game, even Doc Rivers, for a useless challenge. The last 90 seconds took about 30 minutes, it felt like. But there is no chance that the Pacers let up going into Game 2 because of what happened in the final, 2 to 3 minutes of that game clock. So I don't know what they were so upset about personally. They seem to have an issue with the Pacers. There's no love lost between either of these teams. But just the way they acted at that end of the game, you're not going to have any let up. Just because the Pacers blew them out in Game 1, you're not going to see them let up at all. So thanks to the Bucks for making sure the Pacers stay focused for Game 2.
JJ, I know Rick was going to go there pretty early in the presser. I think it was 23 seconds into the presser. He went to Game 1 versus Game 2 last year. I just don't sit here on this Monday morning thinking that's going to happen. And for those that don't recall it, these teams split last year in Milwaukee. Lillard had 35 in the first half of Game 1. Frankly, if you look at Saturday, I don't think the Pacers got some out-of-body experience. I think the Pacers got another gear or two they can go to, honestly. And sure, Lillard's return would or very well could impact some things. But if he's not out there, JJ, I'd be stunned if the Bucks won Game 2, and I don't think I felt that way last year about these teams splitting the first 2 games. I don't think Milwaukee has the firepower to win away from home, and again, I still think the Pacers have got another gear they can go to.
Well, the one thing that you would say is over the course of the season, even though they weren't a high-volume three-point shooting team, Milwaukee had the best three-point percentage. And until late in the fourth quarter, I mean, you saw them put up shots that some of them weren't even coming close. And even to finish the game, 9 for 37, 24%. I know the Pacers are going to work hard to not give them those opportunities. And so it's not as easy to say as you're a good three-point shooting team, you're going to shoot 40%. But let's say they make, 15 or 16 of those 37. It does make it a little bit of a different game. And it does allow them in the middle of a game, if they have 2 or 3 possessions in a row where they get hot, it can change the game a little bit. So that'd be the one thing I'd be a little concerned with. I'm not worried at all about, I hope these are not famous last words, but Kyle Kuzma just does not look like he's ready for this moment. Now, I expect him to have a better game than he did have, which you would be hard-pressed to have a worse game.
If he hits a basket and makes an assist, he's
I was
good.
nervous to ask what would be worse, JJ.
I know. I mean, minus 24 and club trillion numbers in 21 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised also to see maybe a change to the starting lineup because the bench players were so much better than all of the non-Giannis starters. So we'll see if that happens as well. So I do think the Bucks can play better, but I heard you guys talking earlier. I also expect Tyrese Halliburton to be his line score to be different than 3 for 13. Now, I don't even watch that game thinking, it was a bad game for Tyrese Halliburton. He had the 12 assists, 7 rebounds, and was still impactful and a positive when he was on the court. But when he knocks down more shots, even if the Bucks are able to hit a few more, I expect Tyrese Halliburton to have an individual scoring bounce-back game, and so I think they can counter that. But you're not probably going to have a 24-point halftime lead. You're not going to be up 28 in the third quarter. I wouldn't think it's going to be closer. That's just the way these playoff series go. So credit Rick for preparing everyone for it being a different game, and it's okay if it's a little bit closer. That's what the playoffs are all about. So expect it to be a little bit closer. Expect to have to make some plays that maybe matter a little bit more in the fourth quarter and use your home court to your advantage.
And JJ, we'll end with this just to remind our audience, you guys are certainly the viewing option coming up again tomorrow night. And you guys will be on every non-ABC game, which so far in this series, that's every single game. Granted, we only have through game 4, and I don't know, maybe we'll only need 4 games announced so far.
Yeah, and I don't think ABC has anything during the week. So just, projecting forward, if the series goes 5 and 6, I would see no reason why, those games would not be on our air as well. I don't know with 100% the details, and I'll try to pass this along to you prior to tomorrow's show just so you can let the viewers know. But, if you see on your schedules that say NBA TV, in the past those are blacked out when we do the game. So you do need to figure out a way and make arrangements. Hopefully you already have those to watch us on the FanDuel Sports Network. But I don't want people at 7 o'clock to be disappointed. So we'll try to make sure we get that message out there. But again, if you're watching this first round series and you watched all season, basically plan on everything and more that you had in terms of coverage and same time for pregame. And again, a lot of the national shows, they'll immediately go to the next game. The last 2 minutes of that game on Saturday lasted so long, I don't think ESPN even had time for a walk-off interview. So we'll continue to provide all the coverage that you could ask for. I'm so excited to still be working this time of the year and talking Pacers basketball with you, and I look forward to seeing 18,000 of our closest friends and fans on Tuesday night.
Thanks for sharing with us, JJ. We appreciate it, man. Have a great day and have fun tomorrow night.
Thanks, JJ.
All right, sounds good. Take care.
There he is, Jeremiah Johnson on the Payless Liquors hotline right there. And I think if you're the coaching staff and you are Rick Carlisle, you have to look ahead to game 2 because you just don't want to sit there and go, hey, great job, everybody. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
everything was
trust me.
perfect.
I get you have to do that as a coach, but I don't think it's apples to apples from last year. I don't at all. I mean, Lillard had one of the greatest halves you'll ever see in an NBA playoff game in the first half last year. Remember, the Pacers really outplayed them in the second half of game 1. They just dug themselves too big of a hole. Again, Jeff, if we really were going to list like the top whatever most impactful or best Pacer players from Saturday, I don't even know if you get to your star. And so that I think is what is encouraging of there is still another rung on the ladder you can go to. Now you throw Lillard out there, who knows how rusty he would be. That obviously could make a difference, but. Rick Carlisle will join us coming up tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and he probably will want to hear none of what I have to say in regards to my thoughts on game 2.
We've been talking about the top 10 players in this series. It might be fun tomorrow when JB is back and he's out at the Colts press conference. Just started, by the way, the Chris Ballard I saw that visually. It was just getting underway. But it'd be fun. Maybe
Stay with us. We'll give you updates.
Yeah, maybe the three of us can have like a little draft of all the rostered players for the Bucks and the Pacers, and we'll go to the top 12, 4 picks each. I wonder what that would look like at the end. It's got to be at least 9-3, right?
I think I'd rather take Obi Toppin's children than take Kyle Kuzma for that effort there.
Again, I point this out. I have never seen it my entire life, watching basketball, covering basketball, whatever, reading about basketball. In 21 minutes, Kyle Kuzma had no points, no assists, no rebounds, 0 of 2 from three-point range, 0 of 5 from the field, 0 of 2 from the free throw line, couple of fouls. He was non-existent. And his running mate at the shooting position, 2 or 3, wasn't much better. It was crazy how bad those guys were.
Yeah, I'd be hard-pressed to find the last time in an NBA game, and I'd say maybe NBA game period, but certainly a playoff game, where a team starting shooting guard and small forward, if you want to call Kyle Kuzma and Taurean Prince that, each of them had 0 points in a game where they didn't get hurt or they weren't in foul trouble. Again, we're not talking about like a center that might only be out there to be a rim protector or, a point guard that's more of a facilitator and not necessarily a scorer. We're talking shooting guard and small forward.
Guys that are intricate parts of your offense.
So even if Lillard's not back, I would think Gary Trent Jr. in that starting lineup would be a change. But as much as I think that, Doc Rivers didn't want to go there necessarily post-game. Little Chris Ballard update here from the pre-draft press conference. He mentions here in 2025, not as many high-end players in this year's draft, but a lot of depth. Feels like there's some value in the later rounds. So you hear that, and that just screams trade back, does it not?
That would be one of his MOs. But if you really like one of those 2 tight ends, you're not going anywhere at 14 if one of them's still available, are you?
You would think, but if this tight end class is as deep as they say, when you hear team or draft pundits or whoever, GMs, I think Bauer's even said this, when you hear there's a great position group in a year, you could mean great in 2 different ways. One, you could mean it's got great depth, or 2, it's got 3 or 4 really high-end players that we're not used to having. It seems like this year with tight end, it's got a little bit of both. It's got the high-end players. I think we had Matt Miller on from ESPN, the draft analyst, a few weeks back. He said it's not just, Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. What about, Mason Taylor, the son of Jason Taylor, the LSU tight end? He had him as a first-round grade as well. So, again, I'm not married to, Warren is that much higher necessarily on the Colts board than a guy like Loveland. I'll be curious to see how Thursday plays out if the board starts to fall in that manner.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing if he tips his hand at all. And the thing about Chris Ballard is it doesn't seem like he's tipping his hand, but when you go back and look at his most of his comments after a draft, generally you go, oh, yeah, that's kind of what he was telling us, right? Kind of another one of his MOs is he doesn't really misdirect.
Yeah, I mean, he says more than other GMs. I don't want to act like you go back to every draft and it sounded like he said, hey, we're drafting Latu last year. Obviously, he didn't know how the board was going to fall.
Right.
So,
but you get an idea of what he's thinking.
Yeah. Again, he is, think about Ballard, what you think about Ballard. I mean, hell, I thought he should have been fired. So you know where I stand on it. But, he is certainly more transparent than most GMs in the NFL. Some don't care about that at all. Some do care about it.
All right, time for a morning checkdown as Chris Ballard's press conference is underway out at West 56th. Chris Ballard meeting with the media right now because the NFL Draft comes your way Thursday evening. Our coverage begins at 7 with ESPN Radio right here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan, the 14th pick for the Indianapolis Colts. And that'll be what, Kevin? Just shy of 10 o'clock, you think? Maybe a little after that? It's hard to say.
Oh, man.
They like to milk those first-round picks out, though.
What is it, 10 minutes each pick?
Yeah.
So 10 times 13 is what, 130 minutes? That's a little over 2 hours.
10, 15, something like that?
Yeah, 10 o'clock. I mean, obviously, you would hope not everyone's going to use their 10 minutes. But, yeah, you're probably right. And, again, Friday's game 3 up there in Milwaukee, and I believe that tips the same time or just very shortly after day 2 of the draft begins. So For our draft nerds out there, you will be flipping back and forth between Pacers-Bucks Game 3 and Day 2 of the NFL Draft.
We'll keep you up to date all week long in the NBA playoffs. We've been talking about the Pacers' Game 1 victory on Saturday afternoon over at the Fieldhouse, 117-98 over the Milwaukee Bucks. Game 2 set for the Fieldhouse tomorrow night, 7 p.m., airtime 6:30 here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. In the NBA yesterday, Celtics beat the Orlando Magic 103-86. The Cleveland Cavaliers, despite really their starters not playing exceptionally well. I know it sounds crazy, Kevin, on a night when Donovan Mitchell had 30 and Ty Jerome had 28, Darius Garland had 27, but they left a lot of meat on that bone in a 21-point victory over the Heat.
Yeah, pretty status quo, honestly, in the East. And you could maybe even say league-wide. I mean, the Warriors were technically favored in Game 1. Was the only upset we had, was that T-Wolves over Lakers?
Yeah, if you call that an upset, a
Right.
team that's gone
Vegas-wise,
yeah.
it was an upset. But, yeah, pretty status quo here in Game 1. So tonight we'll get Pistons and Knicks, and we'll get Clippers and Nuggets. Quick turnaround from that overtime game.
You like your older guys, Golden State takes Game 1 of the Houston Rockets, 95-85 in Houston. Steph Curry had 31. Jimmy Butler had 25. Those two guys are going to be a handful for whoever they play. I don't know if they're going to win the West or the NBA Finals, but do you really want to see those guys coming to town for a series?
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how the Rockets respond. As much as, Butler and Curry did a lot scoring-wise, how about the Rockets having a season low in points last night? 85. It's not what I think of when I think of the Warriors there. So, Game 1, that was interesting there.
Talk about the opposite of a close game. Oklahoma City Thunder historically putting it on the Memphis Grizzlies. A 51-point victory, 131-80. Almost hard to believe in today's NBA a team could only score 80 points the way the game is played right now, Kevin.
Indeed.
All right, Major League Baseball. Great day for our Cincinnati Reds. They put up 24 on the Baltimore Orioles in interleague play. Final score there, a grand slam for Marte. 1-for-4 for Ellie De La Cruz. Adley Rutschman had a solo home run. Ironically, on the 24-run outburst, they only had 3 home runs.
And Mark Dykton is weeping somewhere. That's why he's not here with us. Some might say he's hungover from WrestleMania. Some might say he had too many Easter eggs. But I know full well he's not here because he doesn't want to play Red Sounder. Mm-hmm. So, Corbin, thank you. Corbin played the Reds fight song earlier, I believe. I'd never heard that, Corbin, until you had played it.
I love that.
That was beautiful. Is that Marge Schott singing it?
Or Shotzi in the background, maybe. Remember Shotzi, the St. Bernard?
Try to remove myself from the Marge Schott era.
So did baseball. Chicago lost to the Cubs, I should say, lost to the Diamondbacks by a score of 3-2 in 11 innings yesterday. The Indians won over at Victory Field against the Toledo Mud Hens. 10-6 was the final score there. They are off tonight. Anything else you want to throw in before we move along here?
A couple Chris Ballard tidbits we'll get to on the other side.
All right, we will do that. Also, between now and top of the hour, we'll give away a pair of tickets to the Grand Prix coming up with the IMS in a couple of weeks here. We'll tell you all about that as we continue on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Happy Monday morning. Thanks for being here with us. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Chris Ballard of the Colts meeting with the media as we speak. His little pre-draft press conference. Kevin Bowen has been studying that intently over the past several minutes and also checking things out on social media. Have we learned anything of significance or anything that's really taken your interest up?
Yeah, just a couple items. Draft-wise, he doesn't feel like it's super as much top-end talent as it was last year. Definitely feels like there is some depth, though, rounds 2 through 5. So if you want to infer something that just screams like a Chris Ballard trade back, which is certainly his MO in drafts. Now, again, you need 2 to tango. So, that'll be something to watch play out, particularly Thursday night, and we'll see about Friday as well. He seems to love kind of those picks round 3, even, additional pick in round 4 he's had a couple times. So, kicker, that answer was interesting. Sounds much more Spencer Schrader related than Matt Gay related of like, no, we feel like he's got great upside. And I'm probably still a little scratching my head on that one. Like, why not just let them compete? If it wasn't about saving money, if it wasn't about necessarily like Matt Gay was bad, why not just have them compete? Isn't this all about competition?
That's what he keeps telling us.
So,
and he said he'll bring somebody else in, right?
Right. But again, Matt Gay certainly much more accomplished in the NFL. He brought up Spencer Schrader kicking for multiple teams. I get what he's saying, but like Spencer Schrader made a 20-something yard field goal with the Jets and a 40-something yard field goal with the Jets and played one game.
It sounds to me like
are we really gonna act like that's like some huge So I'm fine with you bringing Spencer Schrader back. Like I just would have a little bit more of a veteran competition with him there. So that one I don't necessarily follow.
I kind of read it as, and I've seen this happen before, at some point with another missed 50-yard plus field goal, something that seems mostly makeable in today's NFL. It feels like at some point Chris Ballard just said to himself after one final miss, like, I can't do this anymore.
Well, Spencer Schrader's
I'm
never
not doing it anymore.
Spencer Schrader's never attempted a 50-yarder in the NFL.
Right, I get that, but I think it has more to do with Ballard. It's just like, I can't do the Matt Gay thing.
But he's not saying that. He's saying it's more about Schrader, right?
Now he is. Yeah.
So it's like, what is it? I mean, usually Chris is pretty candid.
Yeah.
And so that's where, again, I don't totally follow that. Tight end-wise, if we had a chance to take one that we think can really make a difference, we'll do it. You can't chase. That's when you make mistakes. We'll let the board play out. And he also added that not necessarily their board matches up with maybe others' board. It would not stun me at all if they had Loveland as high, if not higher, than Warren. So in my mock that I just posted on 1075thefan.com, I went with Loveland. I think he fits a little bit more of the specific receiving need. We'll see how he reacts from the shoulder and all of that, but that I think will be a big storyline when Thursday rolls around. We had Corbin to look up earlier. Corbin, give us the year on that. The last time we've had 2 tight ends drafted, because I was talking with Rick Venturi over the weekend. He thinks there's a chance Loveland doesn't get to the Colts either. Like Warren and Loveland would both be in the top 13. Corbin, the last time that happened?
1973.
And those never forgettable names were, you remember?
One was Charlie Spangle, I think.
I think you're making my point for me right now, though. Look, I lived to watch and read about the NFL as a kid growing up. I don't remember either of these guys.
Charlie Young and Paul Seymour.
Yeah.
Went
2 of the
6 and
all-time
7.
greats, Kevin.
I think of them. I think Ozzie Newsome and Tony Gonzalez and, Travis Kelce and Gronk and whoever else I'm missing on the
Shannon
tight end.
Sharp, yeah.
Tight end greats. So, again, we'll continue to react to the Ballard presser. But, yeah, obviously if you look at Vegas right now, they think it's tight end. I mean, it's almost even money. If you were to predict the Colts' first pick, tight end, I think it's like $10 to win $11. So it's not necessarily many other positions that you would label out there. So he was asked about quarterback. They brought in a couple for a top 30 visit. Said that's just kind of the due diligence they've done pretty annually at quarterback. I still don't see the real value in drafting one before round 4 or 5. I just don't see where the reps are. So if you take one in round 2 or 3, you're pretty much having a redshirt year because I think Richardson and Daniel Jones needs all the reps. That's what makes it tough.
How ironic would it be if Anthony Richardson, as many people expect, wins the job, and Daniel Jones is right back where he was at the end of his tenure with the Giants, going up against the scout team, right?
Boy, that sounds horrifying. We should note I've been poking fun at Mark several times this morning of
We love Mark.
of the Reds and him calling off after he saw the Reds score 24 runs. Yes, Mark's dad getting knee replacement surgery. Mark being the great son that he is, he's out there helping out up in Illinois.
And truth be told, he told us about this a long time ago.
He did. Hope
time ago.
Hope everything's good on the Mr. Dykton front, and we look forward to seeing Mark back tomorrow. Corbin, thank you.
I did
as
notice,
always for filling in.
He
Great
was.
intro, by the way, each hour
Yeah.
from Corbin here on the Pacers Game 1 highlights.
Corbin always does solid work. I will point out, though, that in preparation for his dad's knee surgery today, Mark was live tweeting the entire WrestleMania episode.
Oh, he was all about it.
Yeah.
I almost swithed over to it. But
Because
I was
of
like,
Mark. He was hyping it up so much.
Yeah. Mark is, to be fair, Mark is, it maybe hasn't changed my total opinion, but I have certainly tuned in a little bit more than I had previously.
It's good drama. It's good story writing. It's good storytelling. Those guys are amazing athletes. They tell a great story, and they have a lot of fun. I get it. You a big wrestling guy, Corbin?
Not really.
No? When I was a kid, my brother and I loved it. And we would get in trouble for turning the living room into a ring, back in the day.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
No, even I don't know. I'm old. I'm old. I'm not that old, but no. As a little kid, I remember guys like the Crusher, Mad Dog Vachon, Mr. X. Those guys. Roddy Piper was a young guy coming up then. Dusty Rhodes. It was old school.
We've talked so much about Warren Loveland. If not them, who do you like at 14?
Kind of go. You look at the defensive side of the football at that point, don't you? Is there an edge or a linebacker you're looking at that point in time, KB?
Any names stand out to you, or are you more in the position realm?
I just don't know who's going to be around. I cannot get a handle on the first 10 picks of this draft, and I think you're going to see a couple of guys slide down to 12, 13, 14 that you don't expect to see. You're going to see a couple of guys slide up. I think the Shedeur Sanders things changes everything, especially with the Saints not having a quarterback for this coming year. Do they take a chance on him? What do the Browns do? They're always looking for quarterbacks. There are so many different ways this can go. How much we saw Peter Schrager, you were talking about Coach Venturi. How about Peter Schrager, who's pretty plugged in, saying he spent the entire weekend on the phones, and he doesn't think that either one of those tight ends are going to make it to 14 at this point in time.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see what'll happen there. I know some people have mentioned Shamar Stewart, the defensive end out of Texas A&M, Tyler Booker, offensive lineman out of Alabama. I've kind of,
Stewart won the won the combine, right? He kind of won the combine.
Oh, just from a testing
Shamar
standpoint.
Stewart,
Yeah. Will, people have mentioned Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. Again, safety to me with Malachi Starks and Nick Imawari. I feel like the Cam Bynum thing. I get the depth at safety is up in the air, but I just don't love that necessarily at 14. A couple other additional Ballard notes here, and thank you to everybody out there: James Boyd, Joel Erickson, Jake Arthur, et cetera, et cetera. I know I'm forgetting some names, people that have been tweeting out some updates, have been listening to the audio during the break, but Jalen Carlisle did have off-season surgery. He is a guy that, I'm trying to think the injury, I want to say it was a shoulder that sidelined him. A lot of people view him as a second linebacker right now on the roster. Like, linebacker is a definite need, and Ballard did say they will add here in the draft, and he has been historically good at drafting linebackers at every level of the draft. As high as Darius Leonard to as low as Zaire Franklin. So be interested to see exactly what that looks like. But playing time besides Zaire Franklin, very much up in the air.
And the thing that's interesting when you talk about 14 that I can't quite get a grip on, too, of what Chris Ballard is looking for when he needs, if they don't go tight end, those guys are gone, say. They can use help at all three levels on the defense, even after the free-agent signings, right?
Yeah, I think D-line, I've harped on it. Dio Dangbo played the most snaps of any defensive lineman last season. So, Buckner and Stewart are north of 30. You don't have any defensive end under contract after next season besides Latu. So I would go there. I don't know if I'd say this to Rick Carlisle tomorrow when he joins us. Can I make a request to Turner's block tomorrow? Can we either speed up the count 1 to 10 when Giannis is at the line?
Or change it?
Or can we count down?
Something different, right?
I would like just a little bit of a change up. This is what playoff series are all about. You got to have wrinkles. You got to have adjustments. You got to be able to throw a curveball. So I'm offering two solutions. Because I thought the cadence of the just normal 1 to 10,
You
Giannis
get into a rhythm, right?
Yeah, Giannis was 8 of 15. If you look at his average, that's kind of near his average, a little bit below, but it's not like he was horrific. I would like either a countdown or speed it up. Every good student section has
Or
that.
just change it. My suggestion earlier was at the count of 8 or 9, all of a sudden, just come up with a random number. Just to
Skip
make
the
people go, wait,
13.
what?
Yeah, 34 for his own
8,
number.
9, 112.
Yeah.
Like what? Everybody would pay attention to that, right? Subconsciously. You'd be like, that's not right.
Matt throws in here, if both tight ends are off the board, I think Ballard trades back. Of course, the question becomes, do you have 2 to tango?
Yeah.
If you believe Ballard starts in the draft, who are people trading up for? Is it Shedeur Sanders, or is he long gone by then, or does he start to fall? So, yes, Matt, I think you're on to something with that thought, but at the same time, if this is a draft that is a little bit thinner at the top, will you have a caller?
All right. Coming up, 2 tickets to give away at 239-1070 to the Indy Grand Prix coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll do that. Also, we have our Jiffy Lube stat of the day, and we'll also let you in on anything else that Chris Ballard has had to say as his press conference continues on over at West 56. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. All right. Scotty is at work, and so too is Corbin. And how about this, KB? We're talking about tight ends today. As Corbin had said earlier, the last time 2 tight ends were selected in the first 14 picks of a draft back in 1973. Charlie Young went number 6 to Philadelphia. Paul Seymour going to the Bills at number 7. That's the only time this has happened. The only time since the NFL and the AFL started drafting jointly in 1967. Some of the names, though, pretty good. Brock Bowers, Kyle Pitts maybe hasn't worked out all that well. TJ Hawkinson, Eric Ebron, who you know here. Vernon Davis, Kellen Winslow II, Jeremy Shockey, Bubba Franks, Tony Gonzalez, Ricky Dudley, Kyle Brady, Derek Brown, Keith Jackson. Some pretty good ones on that list.
Yeah, if you look at it last year, I think I mentioned to you guys last week, I think of the top 12, I want to say, tight ends in the league last season, Bowers was the only first-round pick. Actually, something I was listening to Chris Ballard in the break, that's something Ballard brought up of, Kittle was a 5th-round pick, and Travis Kelce was a 3rd-rounder, and Mark Andrews was a 3rd-rounder. So I think that's what makes tight end difficult. Undoubtedly, it's the Colts' biggest need, but it's not a premium position. I mean, unlike other positions, you see plenty of hits throughout the draft. Jack Doyle was an undrafted free agent if you want to go there. So that's what I think, again, makes it challenging of how do you view that position. Quarterback-wise, Ballard said he spoke with Anthony Richardson's offseason quarterback trainer, says he feels very encouraged by what Richardson did the past few months in regards to Richardson and Jones. He said at some point we'll need to rely on both. So what does that mean? Richardson's a starter and then he gets hurt and you need Jones?
It's kind of what it sounds like right there to me. We know that Anthony Richardson has had trouble staying healthy, amongst other things right now, and I think it's pretty smart to say to yourself, we're going to need a quarterback, at least one that gives us a chance to win games. And while he hasn't been a top-flight quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, Daniel Jones has shown the ability to win some games in the NFL.
Not many.
No, but I mean, you like a guy that's at least done it as opposed to guys.
I think Richardson actually has the better win percentage if people care about that stuff.
Probably. And how much of that, too, is Daniel Jones playing on just a dysfunctional organization?
Again, I think you get into a big debate about quarterback win percentage and the validity of that. Any tweaks if you're Rick Carlisle from game 1 to game 2?
I don't think you do. Until proven otherwise, I don't think you change a whole lot right now because you just keep coming at them in waves right now. Like, everybody contributed. Like I said, my favorite sequence of that game was in the 3rd quarter. Miles Turner gets a block. That's what he does. Gets it in the hands of Tyrese Halliburton. He comes down the floor. They're on the break. He's looking around. He sees Matherin over there in the corner. Fires to him immediately. Matherin raises, shoots, pure 3. That was kind of a microcosm of how the game went. Everybody was doing what they're supposed to do. I didn't see, you could say that Halliburton maybe didn't have the scoring night offensively that he has a lot of times, but I thought everybody pretty much brought to the table what it is they bring every night.
I think that would be one of the more challenging things for coaches in these series is like, how much do you just kind of rest on what you do well or what you did well in the previous game versus, hey, they're throwing curveballs at us. We've got to be able to, I don't know, maybe you just have that a little bit more readily available to you. But I think that would be challenging. Right now, the Pacers are actually a slight favorite compared to what they were in game 1. Last I saw was 4.5. I would assume that means Vegas thinks Lillard's going to play some. But that'll be the big storyline today. Both these teams will practice later today. What is Damian Lillard's availability looking like here for game 2? I think Shams mentioned pregame that he thought game 2 or 3 for Lillard. I think Katie George, the ESPN sideline reporter, she mentioned game 3. Game 3 is Friday. But certainly that could impact, and I think, frankly, that's the only thing that will impact this series significantly. I don't think Milwaukee's current group, rotation, lineup, bench, however you want to look at it, there's a reason I picked Pacers in 5 before the Lillard news.
And Kevin, in game 2, what are you realistically expecting? I know he is an out-of-this-world talent, and I'll never take that away from him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out and hits 5 threes if he gets back into the game right away. But endurance-wise, conditioning-wise, this guy wasn't just out with like a sprained ankle and you can ride the bike and take pressure off it, maybe go swimming, do things like that. He had a blood clot. You can't do anything at that point in time. What's his conditioning truly going to be like? What can he honestly give you?
Yeah, I mean, today is a month and 3 days from his last game. So, and again, his activity, to your point, really didn't begin until about a week and a half ago. So, and he's what? I mean, how old is he? 30. He's got to be close to my age, right? 30, I don't know, 33, 34. Does he give you a couple 10-minute stints? One in each half? Is it more than that? That is the unknown. Now, as an individual talent, I mean, he's a world-class scorer, and he's, first ballot Hall of Famer. So, yeah, that's the unknown. But I'm just a firm believer they don't have enough firepower to win on the road without him.
Let's go back to the question you asked me a minute ago. If you're the Pacers, what are the little tweaks that you think that they can make to even take this engine up? And you said that they still have another gear. How do they get there?
Well, I think, again, they didn't shoot it. I mean, they shot it okay, but they didn't shoot it historically
they
well,
weren't
or even
sizzling. Yeah.
No, what they score? I think it was what was the final? 116, 117, something like that.
117.
I think that's their average. So offensively, if you just want to boil it down to a very simple stat, you had an average scoring day. So that is where you could increase a little bit. Again, I thought Kevin Porter Jr. I actually thought he was. I thought McConnell had some issues with him at times, and that goes back a little bit to the regular season. So, that was Milwaukee's best lineup. Was Giannis with those bench guys. Porter Jr. can create individually, and Trent and Green can hit open shots. And Portis clanked a bunch. We know Portis can hit some of those. So that would probably be the group. Now, that would be a substantial change if Doc literally reversed it, put Giannis in with that group. I'm not expecting that. Doc did not, post-game, he did not sound like a man pressing the panic button in terms of lineups. Now, sleeping on it for a couple days does that change, but, that would be the thing is Milwaukee is certainly a much better three-point shooting team than they showed, but I also didn't think they missed a ton of just wide-open looks. I thought the Pacers did a good job of challenging those looks.
I think he's got work to do in adjustments that need to be made, but I also kind of understand after an 82-game season and this group has been together in a sense for a while, I don't know that he says to himself, okay, Kyle Kuzma's just a zero. I'm not going to depend on him at all. So I kind of understand where he might say, okay, this is kind of a one-off. Because to go zeros across the entire box score line is just crazy.
At the very least, if you're Doc Rivers, let's say Lillard doesn't play, you have to bench.
You'd think
Kuzma or Prince for Trent. That's where I would start.
Yeah, I like Porter coming off the bench. I think you're right about Trent. So it's possible if Lillard comes back, you could see two brand new starters all of a sudden for game 2. That's a pretty big change in a series.
Now, again, this is us talking, here in the circle. You go back to Doc post game, he wasn't there. I mean, sometimes you get it. Remember Rick was on with us earlier in the year, and I forget, I asked him something to the effect of, hey, are you thinking about any starting lineup changes? And, he said something effective, we're evaluating everything. Well, 10 hours later, they ended up making starting lineup changes. So that's what you usually get from a coach. Doc didn't go there. Now, maybe when they meet the media today after practice, he'll go there, but we'll wait and see.
All right, Corbin, we had a winner for our 2 Grand Prix tickets coming up in a couple of weeks over at IMS, and that would be
Donnie from Greencastle.
Donnie from Greencastle.
Let's go, Donnie.
I like going in it's a little more relaxed atmosphere to the Grand Prix. I kind of like going out there. It feels like you can walk around the grounds a little bit more,
I've had
see
some
a whole
great
lot.
weather days there, and I've had some awful weather days there.
I remember doing a show.
Second Saturday in May.
I remember doing a show there one year. Maybe the first show I was here back in 2013. It was cold. 2014, something like that. It was cold.
Reminder, oval test coming up Wednesday and Thursday. That is honestly, it shouldn't even be called an oval test. It should be called an Indy 500 practice day because we're about a month out. So should be very crowded over there. Weather, I think, looks fairly good. So check that out Wednesday and Thursday. I think the viewing mounds and those sorts of things should be open to you. So some busy day of car activity over there coming up Wednesday and Thursday.
All right, coming up a little bit later on today on The Fan, as always, Jake Query has you covered from noon to 3 today. He'll have his thoughts on Chris Ballard's comments this morning. JMV from 3 to 6. Looking forward to that. And some NBA basketball later on tonight here on The Fan. We got 2 games coming up for you, and they start at 7 o'clock.
Corbin, thank you.
That's a great one. Corbin, great job. We'll talk to you tomorrow.